Whoa. Hello, everyone. How are you today? How are you, Gorge? Oh my God, Gorge. There's already 40 people in here. Wow. We are curious about the news today, huh? Yeah. Yeah, we're curious about the news today. What's up, Gayfesh? Hey, Nasty. What's up, Mama? Flesh lives. I saw someone new in chat earlier. I thought I saw someone new in chat earlier. I'm not gonna scroll up right this second. But I saw you, new person in chat. Welcome to the website. Welcome to the website. Yeah, but hello. Sarah Lynn. Every time I see your name, Sarah Lynn, it fucks me up. Oh gosh. Anyway, what's up? I am become Death Destroyer overall. Are you hungover today? Lux got the cartoon robber tank on. I guess I kind of do, yeah. I never really, the cartoon robber in this top, it really has like, I mean, it's a masculine vibe, right? I'm not usually thinking of this kind of tank top as like mask, but for sure, that better not be a straight pride shirt. Yeah, I'm sorry, I've defected. I've become a member of the opposing team. Regret. I took my rainbow and I hung it up. Anyway, hi. How is everyone today? I hope that you're having a beautiful time. I feel like I've things are going pretty all right for me. I had a great weekend, and then the week so far has not been too frustrating. I'm like doing all my usual shit. Everything's kind of trucking along beautifully right now. What is heterosexuality to a dragon gender? True. Attracted only to other genders. Does that mean I'm attracted only to like I would only be attracted to wyvern genders or something like that? Like, is that how that works? Anyway, what's up, Shuffle? What's up, Newswa? Now that I think about it, I am the owner of a lot of straight pride merch. No! Anyhow. I hope that you all had a good weekend. I hope that the start of your week hasn't been too rough. I was planning on going on my walk yesterday, but it was like thunderstormy, like on and off thunderstormy in my area yesterday, so I didn't get to do my walk, but I managed to get the cardio in. Furry genders? Yeah, I'm a furry. Yeah. Yeah. New Troy. Why? That's a French word that you have as your name. Oh, true, Mama. Everybody always asking wyvern, but nobody asking howvern. Sag. What's up, Jellyby? Hello. So we've kind of got like some different stuff going on today. I figure, we started an hour late, so we might not go for the full hour of chill time. But a lot of the time, that's what we do here. By the way, if you're here and you're hanging out... Yeah, but it's not spelled Neutroy, it's Neutois. Because it is French. Like, R-O-I-S is roi. Neutois. But I could see an Americanization being Neutroy, but that's not how you say it. If I posted the title topic in StreamRex, do I get a, no, it doesn't. Sorry, I'm gonna disagree on that. The same pronunciation of Illinois. Like, Illinois, you mean the highly... It's like when people are like, I'm going to El Dorado. There's a city in Kansas called El Dorado. And it's like, okay, maybe if you're a fucking idiot, it's called El Dorado. Like, I don't... Anyway. This discussion is unprecedented. Okay, Nouvenal, you speak French. So do you know the word that we're talking about? This, like... This word? Right, it's French, right? It's... Yeah, but, like, that's not... Yeah, it's pronounced Neutra. My cousin says jalapeno with the J. I guess sometimes people are doing it on purpose, right? Because my mom dated a guy who would always say, like, chipotle on purpose and stuff, you know? I don't fucking speak French any better than you. Wow, I was like... You have a French name. Tortilla? Yeah, you gonna go get a tortilla? If you're trans and a furry, how are you not on Mastodon? I'm on Mastodon, but I don't, like, go there. I don't really get it. Illinois is also, like, where even does the name Illinois come from? It doesn't matter where the name Illinois comes from. The word...
Neutral.
Okay. Oh God. I'm in a weird mood today. Sorry, y'all. It's gonna be a weird day. Neutral wa. Yeah, I just. Anyway. Quesadilla. Quesadilla. My French wife is asleep, so I cannot ask. It won't matter how it's pronounced when the AI takes over. That's fucking true. You know, I realized that I have definitely come around. I just now had a response to someone in YouTube chat that made me realize that I am definitely a gender abolitionist now. Like, I didn't know before. Maybe not a gender abolitionist, but maybe a gender anarchist. Like, I think that maybe... Because gender abolitionist kind of implies something that, like, gender criticals use that. But I mean, like, gender, it doesn't exist. Because person in chat said there's over 80 genders, and Nutois is one of them. And I'm like, I don't think there are any genders, actually. Like, that was just my immediate reaction to that. DM uses gender ascensionist. Oh, okay, cool. Like, we are, like, transcending beyond gender. Is that kind of what she means by it? I don't think I've heard her explain this before, but, oh man, my finger hurts a lot. I don't know why my finger is so sore today, but it's been really weird. Anyway, yes, Demon Mama is iconic. Yo, there's suddenly 60 people in here. We're gonna get talking about the news shortly. It's not gonna be very much longer, so hit like if you're gonna stay and hang out, or hit like if you're about to leave. Either way, it's much appreciated. It helps all of the channel to have likes on the channel. There are at least 0.01 genders. Hello, Dizzy. Hello. Yeah. This is a great meme. Abolish gender forever. Make more genders. And then they made out. But yes. Infinite genders. At least 0.1. I was just thinking the other day about that guy who, like, someone goes up to the guy at the parade or whatever, and they're like, how many genders are there? And he's like, I don't know, I just got here. That's the primo. It's the primo. Jesus Christ. I wonder... Oh. I'm trying to think if I know off the top of my head where my, my supportive compression gloves are. I've got one of my support compression, wrist things here, but I think I might want to wear one, like my compression glove. I just don't know where it is off the top of my head, so I'd have to go run and find it. Gender is a fluid. that is a problem. Yeah, for sure. Steven Universe happened because somebody said gemders. I don't think that's true, but it would be very funny if it was. I'd like to say trans non-binary is valid. Yeah, so I'm not saying that any genders are invalid. I just think that the entire premise as it's presented is dumb. Like, there are infinite valid ways to be a woman, right? Let's not even talk about transgender women. Let's just talk about, like, cis women, you know? Like, there are so many different ways to be a woman that there is no meaningful, concise definition of woman that, like, encompasses all women. Like, you could say, like, identifies as a woman is the one common denominator, but a lot of people who currently call themselves women don't necessarily identify with that, which is not to say that they're trans, but it's just to say, like, you know, some people's oppression can cause them to feel alienated from their gender, and then, like, they don't really identify with it. So it's like, I get identify as versus identify with, I guess, is like a distinction. I don't know. But yeah, no. It's like, yeah, it's like asking what is the meaning of life. It literally varies for every person. Also, if they don't speak English, then they don't identify as a woman. Yeah. Esta una mujer. I literally just opened up fucking Duolingo today for the first time in years to get back on the Spanish train. Because I think I want to make my younger siblings learn some Spanish. And, Like, obviously, I want to be caught up a little bit on it. Thanks. I mean, my Spanish is not great, but yeah, it's whatever. Wait, hold on. Letters for Jupiter. What the fuck does that? I thought. Did you just say I identify? You said I thought como means eat. Or does como also mean yeah, I awakened the bird. I did. I awakened the bird, and now he's like, you dropped out of the top 10 in your rankings, and I'm like, stop trying to shake me down, dude. Oh my god. Hello, Valhalla Vidya. Welcome in. The language we have for gender is not actually como is how. I taught it for several years. Your pronunciation is good for a beginner. I think that, like, it's just an autistic thing. I just think it's an autistic. Comer, to eat. Okay, so it was because it was conjugated. So I saw como, but, so como can also mean how. Okay. Yeah, the bird is here. He's ready. But yeah, no, I think that the reason why I have a decent accent when I speak other languages is just because of, like, a, I mean, like a rigidity to precision, somewhat. It's like, it's different to my language, so I don't want to, like, fuck it up, you know? Anyhow, I want to drink some water. Oh my god, babes. Do you all have some water? I can roll my R. I don't even know where it comes from, y'all. I have no idea. My family is so fucking white. It's so, everybody is so white in my family. I don't know why I can roll my R's. I just can. You don't suffer from the round vowels the way a lot of Americans do. I don't know what you mean. I learned to roll my R's by making machine gun noises. True! Who out there learned how to roll their R's by, trying to do Chewbacca's? Yeah, I don't even remember why I learned how to roll my R's. I just... Maybe purring? Making noises at cats? Anyway. Yes. Any new people who are just coming in, hit the like button really quick. We appreciate you. We're gonna start talking about the news momentarily. I feel like we could get at least 10 more likes. Can we get 10 more likes? Do you know French? I took 3 years of French. Je m'appelle Zephyr. Je t'aime l'ordinateur. Oh god. Yeah, English is fucking stupid. I'm so glad that I learned English as my first language, because I do not... it's so... Like, every other language is so easy to learn compared to fucking English. A lot of Americans pronounced O as O instead of just a short O. Okay, fair enough. Je ne parle pas. Yes, I said, je m'appelle Zephyr. And then I said, je t'aime l'ordinateur. I cannot do the R right now, apparently. I'm too dehydrated to do that. My BF said, learning English is hard because native speakers don't speak it correctly. Slang and bad grammar makes it hard to follow and practice. I mean, I guess that's fair, yeah. You know, but it's also like, you know, when you learn Spanish in school, you're learning, like, Castilian Spanish. You're learning, like, Spain Spanish, which is not the same as what the Mexican kids in your neighborhood speak. You know, I grew up in an area with a lot of people of color, and a lot of those folks were, like, Puerto Rican or Mexican, and they sometimes would get really shitty grades in Spanish because they fucking speak a different dialect of the language. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different, like, ways to speak English. Yes, I love computer. I love the computer is what I said. L'ordinateur is computer. It was just the first word that came to mind. I was just trying to construct a sentence in French. I haven't taken it in a long time, y'all. The last year I took French was, like... God, I want to say, like, 2010. I want to learn Mexican Spanish, but I'm stuck with whatever Duolingo is giving me right now. But my bestie knows Mexican Spanish and she'll help me. Yeah, I watched a video that was a dude explaining how you can make Duolingo work for you, because sometimes it's not really easy to learn with. And he suggested an app where you can pay a nominal fee to have a native speaker talk to you. Anyway. Trying to talk to the Puerto Ricans that came here after the hurricane that happened after Trump's admin is difficult because of that. Yeah, like Puerto Rican, they have like a different accent. Like, sometimes when white people would start trying to learn Spanish from the other kids, they would be like, it would be like, you sound like a fucking Puerto Rican. I don't know why. It was just pretty amusing to me in retrospect. Excuse me. Idioms and slang. Yo, Danny, that's so true. Idioms make languages very hard to learn. Like, I have a friend who does translation as her professional job. She speaks, like, Arabic, because she's from Lebanon, I think. And she sometimes will ask, she'll be like, okay, so this is what this phrase is, and so here's roughly how that translates, and here's the context where we would use it. Is there a rough equivalent to this idiom in English that someone can help me find? For the purposes of translating. Yeah, so it does. Yeah, it's tricky. Anyhow. The last time I took a formal Spanish class was in 1991. The last time I taught it was around 2016. Well, yeah, so you have, like, lots of experience with it. Anyway, we are here to talk about the news. We are here to discuss all kinds of shit. So let's get into it, y'all. If you haven't hit like, please hit like really quick. If you're on the YouTube chat and you didn't know that this chat over here is my website, luxander.net/live, you might want to come over here to hang out and get the custom emojis. Custom emojis. Direct donations straight to your creator, without like 40% of your money going to Google. The only thing that sucks is that the website has a minimum of $5 dono, and I think that that's fucking annoying a little bit, but nothing I can do about it. Danny, does that say a otro perro con ese hueso? I don't know. A perro is a dog. Otro. Is that 8? 8 dogs with dude something. I don't know. I mean, speak for yourself. You may be here to do the news, but I am here to blow up the sun. Are you blowing up the sun? Otro means other. Yeah, I don't. It means stop BSing. Oh, hueso means bone. Oh, it means, oh, so it means stop BSing, man. Something about a dog. Okay, interesting. The other dog? Something or other? That's so weird. Please hurry up. It's so fucking hot. Yeah, so the reason why we started stream a little late today, Ocho is 8. Right, yes. I was, my brain, I was like, that sounds like 8. But I didn't want to go uno, dos, tres. Anyway, give this bone to another dog. I see. Okay, that makes sense. So, a otro perro con ese hueso means, like, take your shit somewhere else, is kind of how it sounds like. Like, yeah, anyway. Let's hang out and talk about some news, okay? There's like 70 people in here, which is lovely. What my goal is, I guess, I was hoping by the end of the summer to be a streamer who gets like 100 people in here. And we do sometimes. If we have a spicy enough title on the stream, sometimes we do get 100 people in here. So let's see how many people we can get in here by hitting the like button. So this is not really going to be like a segment. I don't know. Maybe it should be. But I wanted to just kind of briefly touch on what's going on in the... in Sicily. This is Sicily. And then the last thing, so there's going to be 3 things about this, but then the last one is not directly about Sicily. But there's some crazy shit happening with climate change and stuff. There's still over a month left. Wait, what? But oh yeah, I was gonna say the stream was so late today because it's so hot outside and my air conditioner was blasting all day. And I wanted to wait until it was like starting to cool down outside. Like right this second, my air conditioning is not blaring. So I think it was a good call to wait a little bit. Okay, so apparently large parts of the city of Catania in Sicily, which is a city of 300,000 people, they've all now gone 48 hours without water or electricity because the cables laid under the roads have melted in 46 Celsius heat. Hold on. 46C to F. Wow, 114.8 degrees. 114.8 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you. Yeah, this Thursday, Lux streaming from inside the fridge. Yeah, fucking no kidding. It's gonna be like 100 degrees in the Midwest, like in Kansas, all week this week. Like literally all week, it is going to be 100 degrees. You know, at the like when it's hottest during the day, so like 4 or 5 o'clock. It sucks balls. But then when we get to like 6 p.m. and it's like it starts to sort of cool down a little bit, so that's great. But yeah, no, I mean, feels bad, right? Exactly. I'm gonna I'm looking forward to living in Seattle where it is hopefully like a little bit more temperate, a little bit more like the same, like less extreme in both the cold time and the hot time, maybe. I hate watching climate change do its thing. This was all preventable. Yeah, I didn't, it's like they told us about it. But it's like a totally different thing to see it happening in real time. Like, it's terrifying how frequently all across this nation, even here in Kansas, we sometimes get hazy skies from smoke. From like fires in Colorado and fires in California, like it's 76 degrees right now in Seattle. Yeah, that sounds fucking glorious. It's literally, and it's 2 hours earlier. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's only All right. Thank you. Yes, I think my hair is cute. I'm ready to have more of it, though. I've started growing out this in the back, so I'm sorry. If you ever see my hair looking like there's something weird or stupid happening back here, it's because there is. It's because I was sorry, I was away from the microphone. If you ever feel like there's something weird and stupid going on with my hair in the back, it's because it is. I'm trying to grow out so that it's like, and then like it's all, I don't know. I want to have more of it. It's 94 with a heat index of 106 in Nebraska. Yeah, earlier, Skylar, here in Kansas, earlier today, it was actually like 98, but it was like, feels like 107 or like 114 or whatever. There's always the awkward phase of growing out hair. Yeah, I think whatever I'm gonna do with the back of my hair, like I'm gonna start growing it out, and once it's like 2 inches long or so, I'll probably bleach this back part and dye it some kind of fun bright colors, and then let it continue growing out. And then the idea is like I want to have all of that hair be long. It's just gonna take a long time, obviously. It's 97 today in my hometown, which is a nice reprieve from the 100+ temps of the last couple weeks. Apparently it's 121 degrees in Death Valley right now. Actually, I think earlier it was like, feels like 114. I don't know, it was crazy. We get some smoke from Canada here in Minnesota. Has not been too bad lately, thankfully. Yeah, and there's like the Seattle has a smoke season basically every August. Is the air quality bad, like, on the human level, or is it just, like, a haze above in, like, an upper level of the atmosphere? Blue hair and pronouns? I didn't say I was gonna dye it blue. I used to have blue hair on the human level. Okay, so there is, like, in August or whatever, you have to like wear N95s outside. Yeah. But no, I've had blue hair before. I used to dye my hair red. Some of this bottom part you can still kind of see has a reddishness to it, but it's faded out a lot. I don't know, like dye my hair like shocking orange or something in the back. That could be cool. Or like fucking bright pink or something. I don't know. I don't know that I ever technically did purple. I don't think I want purple hair though. Anyway, so the things we were talking about climate change. Yeah, fucking 115 degree heat in this in Catania in Sicily, and then Sicily's capital Palermo is encircled by wildfires at present. Current satellite view of the fires burning across Sicily. And then there's this, which is yeah. This is like video of Sicily being on fire. But I just think it's crazy that like the fucking yeah. The pipes, cables, they've like people have gone 48 hours without water or electricity because the cables laid under the roads have melted in 46. Did the PVC melt? Like, cause you would my hair was I never intended for my hair to be light green. I intended for my hair to be blue, but when you have yellow hair, because that's what happens to dark hair when you bleach it, and then the blue starts to fade out, it looks green. But I hated that people thought my hair was green. I didn't mean for it to be green. So at a certain point, I started adding purple to my hair dye so that it would look more blue for longer. Like, no, I'm here. Someone tell Paul Hack in the YouTube chat that I'm here. Tell him to refresh. Oh my god. Did the electricity cause a bunch of fires? I am not sure if the electricity caused the fires, but here's the thing about, like, when you say, isn't that poor design? Like, the pipes that the electricity and the water flow through are made of plastic. And it was probably HDPE that melts more easily than PVC. Okay, that's fair. And I don't know what's standard in Italy. Like, I don't know what's standard over there, so I'm not sure what would be... like, what the pipes would be made out of. But basically, yeah. So, like, okay, so I'm trained as an electrician, if you didn't know this. Hit like if you didn't know that I was trained as an electrician. Hit like if you did know that I was trained as an electrician. Anyway, I can't do it because I have physical disabilities, but I learned how, and here's one of the things about doing electrical stuff is, you know, if you're, for example, if you're gonna install something on someone's roof, or like right underneath their roof, you know, like, you know, let's say there's a section of their house where it's a new addition, so there's no attic on it, and they want to like put light fixtures on the ceiling, but the ceiling is like thin and directly above it is just like the shingles of the house, right? So the shingles, when something hits the shingles, it gets hot. Like when the sunlight hits it, it gets hot, you know? And then, so you have to account for that. If you're gonna attach something to the underside of that ceiling, basically, that you have to account for the fact that it could overheat beyond what the capacity of the wire generally would be. And then you can like upsize the wire, make a bigger around so that it can handle more heat and more conduction under more intense circumstances, right? So like, yeah, you build these pipes and it's same with cold as well, you know, you design your infrastructure in such a way that you can deal with the extremes on either end. Like you get like a manual that has all these like charts and stuff, and some of them have to do with what the average temperatures are in certain areas. Like if you're installing something in Texas, you have to install it to be able to handle like the coldest usual, or perhaps even the coldest possible temperatures in Texas, and the hottest possible temperatures in Texas, And then when the weather starts getting more extreme on either direction, then something that you built to deal with, you know, the extremes of every year, it's just that you're putting them under more extremes than they haven't been built to deal with. And then, of course, you have failures. People were, you know, surprised by the fact that there were so many wildfires at, like, chicken coops and stuff like that last summer. And I'm not, because that exact thing of, you know, if you have a light coming up on the underside of your barn, you know, you've got, like, a barn, it's usually made of fucking metal. You have, like, a metal roof, and the sunlight's hitting it, and it's getting hot, and you've got some wire going up there to the light, and, like, it was probably done in a janky way in the first place, because A, you are allowed to do some weird stuff on farms, and B, a lot of people do their own electrical, and they do not know the rules. So then, yeah, you have a wire that's sized to deal with a certain electrical load and under certain temperature restrictions, but then it's getting hotter and hotter, and so what happens? The fucking wire catches on fire, or it catches something around it on fire. You know, like there's straw, there's all kinds of fine particulates in the air on a farm. So yeah, like no fucking wonder there's a bunch of fires at chicken coops. Like, duh. That makes perfect sense for what's going on with climate change. But those are the kind of things that you don't think about unless you're, like, skilled tradesmen. And then a lot of fucking electricians are, you know, conservative, so it's not like people are applying that type of thinking in that type of way. What happened in Texas is stupid and intentionally not updated for the cold snaps. Yeah, I mean, Texas was already doing a lot of crazy shit to wire, the insulation, here's the thing, the wire melts the insulation, and then it usually catches something around it on fire. Yeah. Or like the insulation itself can burn at extreme enough temperatures. And like by insulation, I mean the wire has like plastic around the outside, right? And that's the danger we're running into, is the plastic melting off of the wire. And then you have a wire exposed and electricity exposed and sparks can fly. That's what happened here in Sicily. The wires, like the stuff melted off of the sides of the wires and like caused electrical failures, and the pipes that the water was running through melted. Presumably, like, I guess if there's no electricity, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on how the system is designed. If the water delivery system is somehow dependent on electricity, and so maybe it was just the electricity itself going that made this problem happen. But, I mean, yeah, you're right, though. If it's HDPE, it probably, like, it has an even lower melting temperature. So, 114 degrees Fahrenheit. I guess they had the utilities running through the same conduits or pumps in the plumbing system. I mean, no, it doesn't... It's, like all... Like, the plastics that are used for the piping and for the insulation on the outside of these, on the outside of the wires and stuff, like, those plastics are all susceptible to meltage, you know? And it's like under the roads, I think that's what it was specifically said here, like cables laid under the roads have melted in 46°C heat. So the air was 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's hitting black asphalt, and then who knows what's going on underneath there. Like, it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And so, yeah, of course it's melting. No worries, Adrian. You're okay. My undergrad is in urban planning. Most of our electrical grid is from the 1930s or earlier, and by our, I mean the US grid in general. We were already largely at capacity with anticipated rolling blackouts before climate change if we didn't update it. Yeah, that's crazy. Global warming has effects that we can't even imagine at the moment. Melting cable and wire coverings was something I didn't even think about until now. Yeah. Yeah, like the insulation on the wires, you know, that take the power from one location to another above your head, you know, those are not insulated wires. But the second you put one of those wires underground, yeah, you have to put it in plastic, you know? Like, you have to insulate it somehow. So this is... Wow. Oh, boy. Cramps. Okay, cool. Oh, my old neighborhood is in Toronto, and it still has the original 1900s grid. I got very used to outages. Jeez. We need to start thinking about literally every single thing we rely on and ask ourselves, what happens when hot, hot, hot? Our AC system struggles to counteract heat above 100F, so that's something I'm worried for going forward. Yeah, no, similar thing, Uncomfortable. My AC has been blasting all fucking day. Like, all day. Starting at, like, noon or 1 or something today. Like, it's just been going constantly. Just desperately trying to keep it at, like... I actually changed it earlier. Currently, it's desperately trying to keep it at 78 degrees in here. Like, I literally have my thermostat set to almost 80 degrees. And it's still struggling to keep up with the heat. My grandma literally got hospitalized for dehydration recently, and it took almost a week for her to recover. It's not gonna be easy. The way AC works, technically it can only keep it 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the ambient temp. Yeah. I think at this point, one of the really important things is to live in a neighborhood with a decent amount of trees. Because, like, for your home, obviously, it's hard to keep your home cool if it's getting hit with direct sunlight, you know? And, like, having mature trees helps with that a lot. Blackout drapes are a lifesaver. Keep your curtains closed and windows insulated by day. Yeah, Dizzy, it sucks because I have so many plants, and I have so many beautiful plants that just want some sunlight. And yeah, I had my curtains open this morning, but then, you know, when I went to go to the gym, I went ahead and closed the curtains just in anticipation. I was like, while I'm gone at the gym, it's gonna start getting hot. But then I cooked curry, so cooking the curry increased the temperature in here quite a bit. And then, yeah. So my AC is set at 78 degrees right now. Oh, shoot, I forgot to reset this thing. Oopsie. Dono goal. Oh my god, please stop trying to get me to do anything with the fucking API. I've already changed the API. Stop. Maybe, yeah, we'll just do this. We'll do a thing. I forgot completely about the fact that you all are so demanding about me showing off my arms now. I live in darkness. I keep the blinds and curtains closed to keep the sun out. But it's just not good for my plants. I do have plant lights, but it's just, like, not quite... It's just not quite enough for a lot of the plants that I have. Just made it in, been mixing and forming 170 pounds of refractory cement by hand. Huzzah, my kiln is 95% complete. Nice! Need to do some minor thinning to help my woods be more drought ready. Oregon is losing so many trees annually to the drought. 2021 was called Firmageddon. Oh no. Yeah, I guess that is a pretty major concern with the wildfires, because it takes out trees, takes out mature trees. Lucky people with aircon. I have a tiny ass table fan. Well, that's one of the things that I will miss about living in Kansas, is that it's very easy to find housing with central air conditioning, like with good functional full air conditioning. Wow, wow, cramps. Wow. Okay. Ooh. My plants demand the blinds and curtains be open. Too expensive to let my dark side win. Yeah, expensive in the sense that you'll lose, like, all, like, the whatever dozens or hundreds of dollars you've spent on your plants. Yeah, it's like, my plants are all doing so well. Oh, God, anyway. I'm kind of starting to wonder if fires are going to start being a thing near where I live. Not really near where I live. Like, Northeast Kansas, honestly, has kind of just a different climate than the rest of, like, Western Kansas. Like, we've been in a drought this summer. Kansas overall has been in a drought, but it's all Western Kansas. Like, it still rains plenty here in Northeast Kansas, like, near Kansas City and everything, so, But it's curious. It's like, are we gonna start having wildfires more here in the Midwest? Like, probably. Of every piece of global warming, the forest fires were the most preventable with proper maintenance. Well, because some of that is caused by electrical failures, right? Like, that is part of the issue. But also, yeah, I guess with proper maintenance, there's a lot of people who, like, start fires when they're not supposed to, or they throw their cigarette out and it starts a fire, like fucking gender reveal parties. Oh my god, Mama, yes, I read the same thing that you read a few years ago. That's true. That Viagra was once tested on people assigned female at birth, and they found that most participants reported reduced or even no period pain, but nobody cared enough to fund more research. Mind you, research was funded for Viagra's other well-known use. Yeah, exactly. Isn't Kansas like a quarter farmland, 3/4 desert, or the other way around? Kansas is like, yeah, mostly farmland, I think. And actually taking care of the forest as well. We maximize tree count for logging, and it is bad for the trees. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, like, I wonder if I could ask my doctor about that. Like, can you prescribe Viagra for the off-label purpose of reducing period pains? Oh, please? Okay. Interesting choices you're making today. Oh man, I got my IUD taken out. You know, if you're familiar with the saga, I had an IUD put in, and then it was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And then it would not stop hurting for like 7 months, and I got it removed out finally in March. But it's still taking this long for me to start having like normal hormonal shit again. So it's like, I'm like, oh, surprise, is it period cramp time? You're right, Shoja. Yes, controlled burns. We stopped doing them. Increasing blood flow? What could go wrong? True. Best gender reveal party? Science never goes into what you want it to. Hold on. Oh, that's cute. Surprise, I'm non-binary. Aw. Cute. That's good. I like that. Okay, bringing back my chats, because everything got fucked up for a second. In some places, it might be too late for controlled burns now. The U.S. Forest Service just admitted they caused a huge wildfire last year trying to do a controlled burn in New Mexico. Like, the attempt to control the fire is, like, less effective. The more fucked up everything is. Like, yeah, it's obviously, it's, like, harder to control a fire than it used to be. I just watched a 3-hour gender reveal party where it was revealed that he had become death. I am become death, destroyer of worlds. Good sweet Jesus. And because my air conditioner is running constantly, it is so dry in here. It is so dry. Which is crazy because of how humid it is outside, but oh my god. Like, I can feel my nose is just like super, super dry. Delicious. I might actually, look, I still have like 32 ounces of water left, and I still might have to go get more at some point during this show. Anyway, we have 70 people in here, and we are talking about some serious news today. So if you would like to hang out with us for a little while longer, get cozy, hit the like button, and consider, if you can, dropping a coin to your streamer, because I am a full-time content creator, and I'm about to be taking on the responsibility of having 2 teenagers that I am homeschooling and helping become adults, so all help is appreciated. Okay, oh yeah, and then this was some other climate change news that I wanted to, like, I was in the middle of reading this, actually, when I had to start stream. So, Gulf Stream could collapse as early as 2025, a study suggests. So the Gulf Stream system could collapse as soon as 2025, according to a new study. The shutting down of the vital ocean currents called the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, by scientists, it would bring catastrophic climate impacts. Excuse me, AMOC was already known to be at its weakest in 1,600 years, owing to global heating, and researchers spotted signs of a tipping point in 2021. The new analysis estimates a timescale for the collapse of between 2025 and 2095, with a central estimate of 2050, if global carbon emissions are not reduced. Evidence from past collapses indicate changes of temperature of 10°C in a few decades, although these occurred during ice ages. Other scientists have said that the assumptions about how a tipping point would play out and uncertainties in the underlying data are too large for a reliable estimate of the timing of the tipping point. All said that the prospect of an AMOC collapse was extremely concerning and should spur rapid cuts in carbon emissions. So yeah, currently AMOC carries warm ocean water northwards toward the pole, where it then cools down and sinks, which then drives the Atlantic Ocean's currents. But then if there's an influx of fresh water from the melting of Greenland's ice cap, and of course other sources, that's increasingly smothering the currents. I can't talk. So like, yeah, like there's a typical way that this works where the water is hot in one location and then it moves to another location and cools down and then it sinks and moves back out. Like there's a system of tides that are usually like roughly the same because of this mechanism. And then, yeah, like if you have a bunch of fresh water of even different temperatures entering the zone, then it's fucking everything up. No offense, but why would these apocalyptic predictions spur any kind of emission reduction? None of the other apocalyptic consequences that scientists warn about do. Yeah, and it's funny because not even the consequences that are currently playing out are stopping anything either. Like there's wildfires everywhere. Oh my god. I have cramps. Ooh. So yeah, like, there's already clearly apocalyptic things happening. You know, the infamous pictures of the red sky in, like, Portland last year or what have you. Oh, my God. I might have to get to this main story thing tonight so that I can freely dip whenever I need to afterwards, because... Oh, this is fun. Anyway, so I don't want to doom about it. Like, I don't really know. Actually, you know, Demon Mama posted on Blue Sky earlier today. She said something. Here, let me just go pull it up so that I can not misrepresent her words. I've been on Blue Sky a lot lately, by the way. If any of you end up going over there, I have one invite code available right now. Am I okay? I'm having period cramps, I think. So I guess, like, I'm fine. It just hurts. Nothing I haven't dealt with before. But yeah, so on Blue Sky, I've been posting there more casually. And also, if you all haven't heard this yet, there's a new free membership option on Patreon. So I'm also going to be posting there. Like, I'm kind of migrating away from Twitter at this point. I've already been posting on there a lot less since Elon bought it. But now if you want to like follow me on a regular basis, you can check the community tab on here, because I'm gonna use the community tab on YouTube to connect with the audience. And I'm posting on Blue Sky, and I'm posting on Patreon, and so those are kind of my three main platforms right now. If you ever want to follow elsewhere. Yeah, if you're on Blue Sky, retweet Luxander and Mama Mephistopheles. People do not interact a lot on this website, and it's a bummer. I'm like, yeah, I know, I also am mostly a scrolling person. Mostly I scroll, but I'm trying to do better about hitting the like button so that, like, other people's posts are getting more engagement. Twitter broke for me today. I cannot open the app at all. Oh, God. Yes, and retweet Gayfesh, of course. But I'm on here looking for Demon Mama. That's why I'm here. My fingy hurts. My fingy. I love how she's like no username, just at demonmama.com. That's fucking... Reskeet. Yes, it's reskeet. There are no tweets in the blue sky. So Mama actually said earlier, one of the things on my mind right now as I'm about to embark on an ambitious trip is how can I talk about nature more effectively? I feel like appreciation of our environment is at an all-time low, that it's been replaced by climate apocalypticism that steps past recognizing what still lives and must be saved. And you know, that resonates with me a lot, and I'm really not sure how to address this, because like on the one hand, like there is a lot of crazy shit happening climate change wise. Like we can point to numerous examples of natural disasters that are from Explain Patreon as a social media homepage. You follow all of the creators that you like, and so it's like a creator focused social media feed, but then they're also going to introduce some elements that will encourage like interaction between fans as well as interaction between fans and creators. They're rolling some stuff out, but so you would follow all of your favorite creators, and if you could follow them for free and you get all of their public updates in like a centralized feed thing. And then there's like comments section. There's always been a comments section on Patreon. People are not super active with it, but like I think as Twitter is getting more and more fucked up, like there needs to be some other platform where you can engage with people as a creator, you know? Like, that's one of the things that sucks about Twitter and about Facebook, frankly, is that they both gradually started reducing the amount of views that your posts would get if you posted links or if you posted content with certain words in the content, as well as attempting to curate everyone else's algorithm. So, like, if I post about something maybe that's not very many of my friends are interested in, there is also like an algorithmic filter that is keeping me out of their feeds because that post is not relevant to their other interests, you know? But like, so like there is not really a good social media platform as a creator to engage with my audience. Like, or like you have a different audience on every platform, you know? But yeah, so that's kind of the idea, I think, behind that. Anyway, I have at gayfesh.com too. Yeah, I need to fucking figure out how to do the integration with Luxander.net. I know I've looked it up. I just haven't gone in and like there's some code from Blue Sky that you need to copy and paste into the Google domain stuff for the website, I think. Like, I just haven't gone and done it yet. I'm like a little bit weirded out about any kind of integration between my actual domain and like Blue Sky, which I know nothing about the security of. Like, I don't know anything about. Like, I'm acknowledging that this is an area where I don't know much, and so I'm not aware of what risks may be involved. Just need to add a DNS record. Cool. I hope Elon gives up on Twitter soon. I spent like 6 months building up 2,400 followers on Twitter because I'm not good at it. Only 2% of the way there on Blue Sky. It sucks. Like, I wish that Twitter wasn't dying, because it was a great... I enjoyed my curated experience there. Like, that's where I learned about long COVID stuff and, like, shit that was going on with black people in the black community and shit that was going on with Native American people. Like, I managed to curate a space that was very diverse, and it sucks that it's gone now. But yeah. So I was just contemplating what Demon Mama was saying, and like, is it to some extent, and I don't think that she would have made this claim, to be clear. I don't think that she's casting any aspersions on how anyone else does coverage of the climate change crisis. But like, is there something for me to contemplate in like there being a more responsible way to focus on climate change? Because so much of our news cycle is sort of dominated by scare tactics and sensationalism, and like clickbait. So yeah, obviously news like this I feel like it's reasonable. Wrong scene. Wait, what was the wrong scene? What? Is my Streamlabs fucking up? I thought that I pressed the right button. I don't know why it messed up. Sorry. Anyway, I was just saying, like, obviously this news gets, like, headlines and clicks and retweets. Like, this... Yeah, I just clicked the wrong button, I guess. So, like, yeah, Mama was saying that this... Like, maybe our appreciation of the environment needs to be... Like, there's a climate apocalypticism. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense why there would be this feeling. Dick's canceled. Yeah, I know, I'm canceled. Canceled. So, like, to an extent, you know, this is coverage, and it's good to know about these things, and it gets the clicks and everything, but should we balance this coverage, maybe? I'm not saying stop this coverage, like, maybe not stopping... Because this is an interesting... Like, I think that this one in particular enabled us to have an interesting conversation about, like, the electrical grid and that, and, like, the particular issues that are gonna arise between needing, like, to, you know, the temperature is getting higher and literally melting the insulation off of our wires and things like this. Like, it's an interesting thing to talk about and everything, but yeah, like, is there a need to balance? And I think that that's fair. Yeah, like, appreciation of our environment, like, maybe we should go out and, like, maybe that's part of the journey for me in terms of posting about getting well, about feeling better and being well as human beings. Like, you know, not just doing exercise for yourself, but also going outside and taking care of yourself in that way of, like, appreciating the nature around you. Stop Cop City might be a good example. Part of the fight is to preserve a forest which protects Atlanta and is crucial to that ecosystem. Yeah, for sure. I knew that had something to do with a local forest, but also Cop City itself is, like, horrifying, right? Like, Cop City itself should be opposed whether or not it endangers a forest, but that's one of the easier ways to say, hey, you shouldn't do this. While most of the work that needs to be done is on a corporate and government level, maybe a good way to take the global warming message is to show people what they can do to help in their own home. I don't want to do that necessarily, because I don't want to shift the focus onto individualism. But I think that maybe instead of trying to use fear to motivate people to do something, that maybe it might just be better to try to use, like, an urge to protect what we already have. I feel like that's sort of what Mama is driving at here. Like, recognizing that there are things that still live and must be saved. And so it's like, maybe we should talk more about how some of the coral reef started growing back over the last couple years. Or, like, you know, looking, like, saying, hey, look at this beautiful thing. It's still beautiful, even if it has changed from what it used to be because of climate change, and we can still protect it. Like, instead of focusing on the doom and, like, the fear and the terror, the coral reef won't be restored until I get a white leaf site. We'll have to get you one. I mean, it would be very easy for you to get one, wouldn't it? You would just be like, hey, excuse me, please give me one. And they would be like, okay. That's pretty much how it works. Focusing on the connection we could have with the natural world. Yeah, I think that's kind of what Mama is driving toward here. Like, having more of an appreciation for nature by... There's a backlog. Aw, that sucks. Yeah, I guess... I feel like I got into the White Leaf site, like, just as it was a little bit... Like, you know, not everybody had one. It kind of feels like, since I've gotten my White Leaf website, it feels like it's less of a status symbol than it used to be. Because now everybody has one. Delicious. Anyway, so I'm just kind of contemplating that a little bit, you know? If we should be like, this is something worth protecting, and we can protect it. And to be clear, I don't think that individuals shouldn't take action in their own homes. I just think that that's not where I want it's not the idea here. We're still trying to drive toward systemic change on climate change because, you know, individuals trying to figure it out are not going to succeed. Excuse me. So what we have to do is like find a different way, a less pessimistic way to motivate people to action. I think is sort of that's what I've drawn from Demon Mama's skeet from earlier today. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about those like climate related things because I think it's important to talk about. But we also have other things still yet to cover today. Oh man, we should watch this because it's gonna be funny. This will be a segment actually. Hold on, what have I talked about already so far? Was climate change the main thing? Climate change was our first thing so far? Oh my god. I'm on a backlog of fucking editing again. 7:25. Oh my god, Gorge, it's almost August! Yeah, Petco guy. Okay, cool. I've been finding myself really appreciating the ways Sophie Strand writes and speaks about nature and the ways we relate to it. I am not familiar with Sophie Strand. Is there a particular writing of hers that stands out to you? Oh, she's really young. Yeah, I might have to check into her a little bit later. It's starting to get warm in here. Oh my god, guys. I even have the air conditioner on. Is this gonna be like what it's like when I live in Seattle? Is this gonna be what it's like? I'm gonna have to do this all the time? I need a quieter fan. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. Hello. I'm pretty. I have flowers. Beautiful. So let's move on to a new thing. There's more stuff to talk about. Oh, oh my god, there's two kind of funny things to talk about today. Flowers. Flowers. The purple of the fan pairs nicely with the green of the background. Yeah, it kind of does. It's pretty cool, huh? On purpose. Definitely wasn't an accident. Did you know that the Foo Fighters used to be AIDS denial people? This is a new thing that I just learned today. The Foo Fighters, the band, Dave Grohl, formerly of the band Nirvana. Yeah. So here's a fun little thing. I found this article. The Foo Fighters AIDS denialism should be on record. So let's see. Yeah, this starts off with an unrelated story about COVID denialism. At age 52, the Foo's Dave Grohl is rock's cool uncle. Here's a bunch of cool stuff that he's done. You know, when Kurt died, I had this whole new outlook on life that we're all so lucky to be here. You can't take life for granted, blah, blah, blah. So back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show, and the Foo Fighters were supporting very publicly an organization called Alive and Well AIDS Alternatives, which was an AIDS denial group that argued that HIV did not cause AIDS and that HIV was, in fact, harmless and non-contagious. Alive and Well argued that AIDS was likely caused by recreational drug use and or the very antiretroviral drugs themselves, which were being used to treat HIV patients. Like, people were saying that, you know, people were getting drugs to treat HIV and that the drugs were giving them AIDS. As such, this organization discouraged people from taking HIV tests, practicing safe sex, or for those living with HIV, accepting medication. Like, okay, but why? But there's like so many other reasons to practice safe sex. Why would you advocate? Why would you become... Okay, so this is what I learned. This is what I learned. People have been on the side of the virus my entire life. This was in the late 90s. I was born in 94. Yeah, this is insane. How much do you have to hate someone to tell them that their medicine is fucking poisonous, right? So to be fair, the earliest treatments for AIDS did have very intense side effects, including blindness. Like the medicine that you were on to try to like contain your symptoms of HIV and AIDS were would cause like severe complications sometimes because of course we're like trying to come up with a medication to treat a brand new fucking disease. Oh my god. I had a quack college professor in a college class that was taught for, quote, current issues in science at the Christian university I went to in 2001. People still believed it after the turn of the century. So, yeah, oh, it gets even fucking better, dude. So in the late 90s, its director was personally received by South African President Thabo Mbeki, a man who also denied the link between HIV and AIDS, and by banning antiretroviral drugs in public hospitals, is credibly blamed for hundreds of thousands of deaths. Alive and Well charity was was amplified by one of the biggest bands in the world. In early 2000, President Clinton's director of AIDS policy admonished them, saying, quote, "For the Foo Fighters to be promoting this is extraordinarily irresponsible behavior." There is no doubt that there is a link between HIV and AIDS. They based this apparently on one book that adopts this theory, and that one book was called "What If Everything You Thought You Knew About AIDS Was Wrong?" Self-published by self-published pseudoscience written by Alive and Well's founder, Christine Maggiore, a woman diagnosed with HIV in the early 1990s. This fell into the idle hands of Foo Fighters bassist Nate Mendel, and Mendel conscripted his bandmates into the advocacy for this group. The alliance lasted years. In January 2000, the group held a benefit concert for Alive and Well, like you said, in 2001. So, like, yeah, she's dead now. You know what? Do you want to know how she died? Do you want to take any bets? To placing bets on how she died. So, yeah, no, I know. We're getting there. We're getting there, Valhalla. We'll get there. But yeah, so up until, at least until 2000, there was a benefit concert that the Foo Fighters threw for Alive and Well. The leader said, "I'm living in perfect health without any AIDS medicines," she tells the cheering crowd between songs. Let's see. Yeah, the founder of Alive and Well is long dead, and so is her daughter. Both succumbed to AIDS. Christine Maggiore fell pregnant in 2001, spurned antiretroviral drugs, breastfed her daughter, and refused to have her tested for the virus. Basically, she deliberately gave her baby HIV. Which, is a crime. If you have sex with someone unprotected and you deliberately give them HIV and you should have, told them that, isn't that a crime in some places? So, she gave her baby a deadly disease and then her baby died. The child was 3 when she died, and after an autopsy, a coroner ruled that the unequivocal cause of her death was AIDS-related pneumocystis pneumonia. And then Maggiore doubled down, and the Foo Fighters continued to endorse her organization. She accused the coroner of political bias and continued to refuse treatment for herself, and she died 3 years later after the daughter died, also of pneumonia. You might say that this is old news, except that it was never really news in the first place. See, this is what's interesting. There's almost no cultural memory of this. You all were totally surprised and had no idea. I don't even know when exactly, or if if the Foo Fighters have ever, stopped supporting this organization, because they were still openly supporting it, apparently, after Christine's daughter died, which would have been in, 2004. Regarding the band's destructive foolishness, the internet resembles a hastily cleaned crime scene. Professionally rinsed, however, are Paul Brannigan's in-depth and best-selling 2011 biography of Grohl and Mick Wall's 2015 band biography, quote, Learning to Fly. Many years of interviews and magazine profiles, accounting for hundreds of thousands of words, have never referenced it. A 5,000-word profile of Grohl in Rolling Stone 2017 refers to the, quote, crazy early years of the band, which included the 2001 overdose and subsequent coma of the drummer, but the band's long and destructive support of HIV denialism is typically never mentioned. So it's not you know, oh, they weren't going into details about what the band was doing at that time. Like, no, in 2001, they were still actively supporting this organization. They quietly removed the mention of it on their website and just don't talk about it. Yeah, yeah. To be fair, I have almost no cultural memory of the Foo Fighters. Oh my god, true. Excuse me. Anyway, this continues on and just basically says that conspiracy theories are bad, and Grohl should know that because of the conspiracy theories surrounding Kurt Cobain's death. So that's crazy though, but I wanted to do that and then like probably post it as a little segment on YouTube because this is something that most people don't know about. Like, I had no idea, and they've scrubbed the internet of it. Like, they've just like made a deliberate point to hide it, basically, even though it was ongoing like 15, 20 years ago for sure. I didn't know that HIV denialism was a thing in this capacity, but I was born in the 90s, so it's unsurprising I missed this. Right, I didn't know that there was like, I could imagine there being skepticism about the existence of HIV or something, right? But not that there's a specific denialism between the connection between the human immunodeficiency virus and then the like syndrome that happens as a result. Anyway, back in the 90s. Okay, I'm gonna type something up real quick. Foo Fighters. Why am I typing in caps today? I don't really know why. Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show. Oh my god, this is gonna suck. I don't even know if I can fucking talk about GenSpect today. I mean, I can talk about it, but it's probably not gonna be a segment. Back in the 90s, I was chewing on washcloths, shoving Cheerios in my face, and hiding under the futon. Truly. Oh my god. If you ever get a chance, you should watch the documentary Miles Power did on it. I have not seen that. People denied the relation between people with COVID dying of heart attacks and the COVID-19 virus. Oh yeah, people keep saying that like, oh my god, all these young people having heart attacks, the vaccine is causing heart attacks. It's like, no, we literally fucking told you that COVID is a cardiovascular disease, you idiot. You absolute brain-dead moron. Like, let me lobotomize you so that I can carve some more fucking grooves into your brain. Does that sound good? Maybe that'll improve the situation somewhat. Back in the 90s, I was living in Russia and getting the Macarena 2 years later than everyone else. Oh, gosh. The documentary is called House of Numbers, The AIDS Denialist Movement by Miles Power. Cool. My fingy still hurts. Back in the 90s, I wasn't existing until 97. I was alive for most of the 90s. Wait, no. Yeah, no, because my birthday is kind of early in the year, I was alive for most of the 90s. I was alive for slightly more than half of the 90s. Back in the 90s, I liked the Big Butts song. So the thing that I like about the Big Butts song is that it spurred on Jonathan Colton to make a really amazing version. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard Jonathan Colton's version of Big Butts, but it's like, I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. When a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face. That's like the main reason why I know any of the words to that song, actually. Children are immune was one of the worst things people could say about COVID. Who knows what health problems will be linked to it in the next 10 to 20 years when they grow up. I mean, that's crazy because there's already been so many documented health problems, like children developing type 1 diabetes, like 8-year-old children developing type 1 diabetes, something that you're usually born with. Like children's teeth falling out, like even children's adult teeth falling out. Yeah, shout out to Sir Mix-a-Lot. Hell yeah. I was alive for all of the 90s, but was I living? I don't think I was, for sure. I was alive for most of the 90s, but I don't really feel like I was living. I was living with a very abusive parent. I guess not very abusive. She was abusive, but let's not say very abusive. That kind of implies some things that didn't happen. I was born in 90. Do you think because AIDS became too hard to deny and anyone denying it who had it died in the way they did, so couldn't keep a conspiracy going? I'm really not sure. But they clearly, like, they did keep a conspiracy going through into the 2000s, you know? I told my boss that long COVID had been linked to neurological issues that could be hidden for a while and then resurge. She went white. She's had it twice. It got worse when I let her know that it can have a stacking effect. Yeah, just... I think people don't understand how viruses work. Like, once you have a virus, congrats, it's living in your body forever. Like, you might not be sick from it after a certain point, but, like, it's in your body forever. And, like, I actually I have noticed a little bit of neurocognitive decline after I had an infection. I think that I had Delta. I never got tested, but I was sick, and I'm pretty sure that I had the Delta wave. Like, it was during that time. And I have noticed some weird memory issues, and there are times, like a couple weeks back, maybe a month ago, I was like, wow, it feels like my memory issues are just, like, totally gone right now. Like, aside from the usual ADHD memory issues that I have, which are, again, I'm used to that. But, yeah, like, it comes and goes, right? It gets better, and it gets worse. I had Delta and I've had cognitive issues. Yeah, I feel like Delta was not too bad as far as the long-term effects. Like, Delta's pretty mild, and I had been vaxxed pretty soon before that. Like, before I caught it, I think, so. I know someone who had COVID-19 3 times. They had debilitating long COVID symptoms for months. They were vaccinated, just unlucky. There is only a small difference that the vaccine makes to your outcomes for long COVID. And also, the vaccine is less effective after like 6 months. So unless you're getting a new booster like twice a year, like a lot of people, quote unquote, are vaxxed. But if you only got the first 2 and you never got the bivalent booster and you've never gotten any boosters since then, you are unvaccinated now. The disease is so much different than it used to be, and your immunity can wane. Like, you do not want to fuck with this. I'm saying they were unlucky to get it 3 times despite being boosted. No. Vaccine does not prevent you from getting COVID. It's not like a magical barrier. It's just to reduce the intensity of your infection. Like, the COVID gets inside your body, and your body has a reaction and starts trying to kill it. Like, stabbing is what I'm doing. I'm stabbing. It starts trying to stab it, right? But it, like, doesn't prevent you from getting an infection. It only helps you get over it faster and hopefully keep it from getting as intense, right? So, like, that's what the fucking problem is you people keep getting vaccinated, and then you go do stupid shit, and then and you're fucking surprised when you still catch it. Like, it's not a ward against the disease. It's not like a magical protection on you. Like, the whole concept of a fucking vaccine is that it's teaching your immune system to recognize the virus so that it can more effectively fight it off. You still have to protect yourself from transmission. Your friend isn't lucky, they're stupid. I get so fucking annoyed about this topic. I had a coworker who flew on a vacation to Mexico in like fall of 2020, and surprise, she got COVID, then long COVID, and last I talked to her like a year ago, she still hasn't fully recovered her mobility or sense of taste. Yeah, it's scary shit. And I've seen some people who got COVID in the first wave who were like, my long COVID started to get better, and now it's 3.5 years in, and they are like, like, they're getting worse again. Like, we don't know what the longer term effects of this are. Not even 10, 20 years in the future, but even in that... I'm in Seattle now, so I kind of have to raw dog city air every time I want to go get groceries. Now it's a little spooky. Just wear a fucking N95. What do you mean you have to raw dog city air? Just wear an N95. I swear to... I go to the gym and wear an N95. When I go for my walks in the morning to do my cardio, I wear an N95. Because first of all, people walk past you on the sidewalk and you literally can catch COVID from that level of exposure. And second of all, because it helps with my allergies. But, like, you can just wear an N95. They're not even that expensive. Like, just go to Home Depot. I think talking and wearing a mask makes me pass... A mask makes me pass out? Is that what you're... Like, I'm not saying that it's not hot and uncomfortable at times. Like, especially if I'm exercising while wearing my mask. Like, it gets hot and sweaty, and sometimes, my sweat starts to drip onto my lip, and I have to, like... push the mask against my face to, like, absorb some of the sweat on my lip. I've been having some bad reactions. Yeah. I know it's tough for some people health-wise, you know. I have a rough time regulating my body temperature, so I get it to an extent. But still. Where I live, people have just now gone back to normal, i.e. coughing all over each other. It's like we already don't respect the flu. There are preventable deaths every year in the United States from flu, and we just don't care, apparently. Okay. Yeah, why was everyone so excited to be spraying their spit on each other? My mom has never had a flu shot. Oh my god. We're doomed as a species, I think, y'all. We're doomed. Chipoodle? Is a chipoodle a chihuahua and a poodle? Is it like chihuahua sized but poodle texture? I mean, when has anyone ever cared about the flu, TBF? I felt like I was gonna die the one time I caught a serious stomach flu. Like, very seriously, I thought I was going to die. I didn't end up going to the hospital, but it was probably the first time in my life that I've ever had a physical experience where I was like, I think I might die today. Did you die? I don't think so. I was definitely in and out. I think I was dancing near the veil for like a good solid day. A lot of people never get the flu, and it shows. That shit can kill you if it doesn't get treated. Yeah, so here's my flu story. I was at work, and I had only been at work for maybe like 15 minutes when I started feeling a little bit hungry or like a little weird in my tummy. So I went to go get some milk or something, and by the time I got back to the register, I was feeling very ill and like just not feeling very good. And I went to the bathroom to prepare to throw up. And I got like on the ground near the toilet at work in a public restroom, thinking I was gonna throw up, and I broke out in a full body cold sweat, and then I started to feel like I was gonna pass out, and so I laid down on the floor, and I was overheating and stuff, and I laid down on the floor, and I specifically remember being like, I'm gonna turn my head to the side in case I pass out and throw up, so that I don't drown in my own vomit. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes, that kind of passed, like the intensity of that passed, and I went into the office to start talking about going home, and I was like sitting on the floor in the office, like throwing up in the trash can. And then I went home. I was picked up by my father-in-law, and I went home, and I was in bed all day, and the entire day I spent drinking water and throwing it back up and slipping in and out of consciousness. And it was awful. And I was asking my partner, I was like, will you please check on me on a regular basis? Because he was like on his computer and I was in the bedroom. I was like, will you please check on me? Because I really genuinely feel like I might die. Like, please check on me. And so that is, that's the time I got a really, really nasty stomach flu. Well, I don't actually know what it was. Yeah, like saying stomach flu is different than influenza. I don't actually know what it was. Like it was some kind of really intense bug. caught the flu once and couldn't breathe. It's terrifying. Dancing near the veil made me think of Dragon Age. Well, to be fair, it was a very silly thing for me to say. Anyway. I think it's the heat and the talking and the mask and being in the car all combined or something that gave me like a really bad episode of Queasy Hell. Yeah, the overheating and being in the car and stuff, it for sure. Was that Osmosis Jones shit? Yeah, some Osmosis Jones shit. I fell unconscious in college as an undergrad, and my roommate said that I appeared to be dead, had no pulse, etc. Somehow I came back. That's terrifying. That ended my being an atheist. So an experience where your brain was doing a lot of psychoelectrical signals stuff was what made you become a believer, instead of, like, recognizing that your brain was just doing some insane shit. Like, you hallucinated I'm sorry. Anyway, this was before COVID, I think. I woke up in terror, unable to breathe, and started running around in panic until I dropped to the tripod position, gasping until I got air through. Oh, that's terrifying. Oh my god, we are, like, not talking about the actual thing that is on the title thing. We need to do the title thing before it gets to be too late, or else I'm just gonna, like, leave without talking about it. Anyway, let's go ahead and transition over into this other thing. Okay, we'll do one fun thing, and then we'll talk about the serious thing. My sister Vosh and Luxander are streaming all at the same time. Does that mean that I can host people to send to Vosh? That would be very funny. I don't get why people who get OBEs immediately think God and not just, hey, that was a cool experience. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Wow. So let's have a funny moment, okay? People have meltdowns over the strangest things nowadays. You know, the conservatives accuse us of being super triggered all the time, but then they get triggered over the silliest little things. And I haven't watched this video yet, but we're watching it together. And I want to see what happens here. Have you ever gone to a grocery store and seen a single-stall gender-neutral bathroom and absolutely lost your goddamn mind? Has that ever happened to you? Has this ever happened to you?
This is stupid. People are not putting up with that crap. I don't care what the hell is. I just did. She just told me my opinion didn't matter. She just wanted to talk to me like that. I thought I was. She said she was. Stop with the general neutral shit. Men and women are different.
So what? We don't have an option.
That's property management as I was trying to talk.
Pass it up the chain.
I don't have an option.
Pass it up the chain.
You have to
Pass it up the chain. Pass it up the chain. Pass it up the chain. People are tired of
I
it.
don't have a problem with it. It's on our own.
You don't have the problem.
He said, cut it out with this gender neutral shit. Men and women are different. Like, bro, like, are you just genuinely unfamiliar with the concept of a gender neutral washroom? Meaning, like, yeah, he's mad about a single stall bathroom. Like, the store probably doesn't even have 2 bathrooms. Those are always gender neutral unless you're a moron. Yeah, like, I'm guessing that this is a small store. This kind of honestly looks like maybe like a big Dollar General or something. And, oh, it's at a Petco. Oh, it's at a Petco. So it's a Petco. Petcos are never, like, huge stores. There is a good chance that the only restroom in this store is that bathroom. Is that gender-neutral bathroom. Yeah, trying to show his power, trying to order people around using the bathroom, making him feel superior. Yeah, I don't disagree with that analysis. A male Karen. Yeah, what's the equivalent? He's a Kevin? This fucking Kevin here. No, I think it's still Karen. I think it's just still Karen. I think that it would make the men's even madder if we called them Karens, so they're just Karens. Like, what happens in this man's house? That's my question. What happens in this man's house? Does he have, like, do he and his wife have separate bathrooms? In their bedroom, do they have one of those attached bathrooms that has the, like, whatever the hell it's called? There's, like, a special word for it when you have the two sinks right next to each other. But then, like, you each have a toilet on opposite sides with a separate door that shuts. Like, you are not allowed to use the same toilet as a woman because your penis will fall off. Kevin is close, but he smashes drywall and chugs Monster. That's Kyle. Kyle smashes drywall and chugs Monster, okay? We've known this. They switch the toilet seat out every time a different person goes. Like, each person... It's not even gender neutral. It's, like, not even a gender thing. Each person has their own toilet seat. I want to get a ladies' room sign and put it in my home bathroom and see what people do. I went to the bathroom and my dick fell off. I think there was a force field. Oh my god. The Petco has a toilet for the public? The UK equivalent would tell you to go piss at home. What happens if someone switches all the bathroom signs? Yeah, you, like, walk into the men's restroom and there's no urinals. You walk into the women's restroom and there's urinals. Like... Only girl dick here, boys! Petco should have 2 restrooms, one for cats and one for dogs. This is bird erasure. Wait and see how people gender cats versus dogs. I don't even think that's a question. I don't even, like, I like, maybe it could be a fun little experiment, but I think that I think you would have, like, a 95% cats equals females, dogs equals men's turnout. Like, I don't think that it would be... Yeah. Yeah, this is clear bunny erasure. Anyway. There are only 2 pets. There are only 2 pets. Later, Ellie. Namaste. Namaste. By the way, I'm gonna make cat ears. You thought I was kidding? I'm gonna make cat ears. I have this, really fuzzy yarn that I got because I made myself a Christmas stocking. So I have the Christmas stocking is green, and then I got, like, a yarn that was kind of, like, fuzzy to use around the top for the, like, you know, the trim of the stocking. And it's perfect for... cat ears. What about mushroom ears? How would that work? Mushroom ears would just look like antennae. Would they not? Like... Oh, you know what? You know what? That would be cute, though. Not this, but, like, if it was smaller. Like, if I made a headband that had, like, a bunch of tiny mushrooms on it, that could be fucking cute, though. Boy, howdy, would that be... I would easily charge, like, $100 or $150 for one. If I were to make, like, a headband... Like a true, like, headband that was just covered in, like, crochet mushrooms. Oh my god, that's a great idea. Yeah, it's like a mushroom crown. That's fucking cute. That's a fucking cute idea. I might have to make myself one of those before Renaissance Festival starts, which means I gotta get cracking on it because I only have, like, a month left. Yeah, I'll give you royalties, exactly, Violet. Yeah, I'm just... No. You misunderstand. Any ideas that you say in chat are my ideas now. That's how it works. Anyway. Okay, now let's move on to the actual thing, right? Let's move on to the actual thing. Royalties meaning flexes, yeah. Like, Violet gets her own private flexes. Her own private uncensored flexes. We have not gotten any donos today. That is okay, but it does mean that you will not get a flex. Unless, you know, we're getting, like... I started a little bit late, you know, so... But I'm probably still only gonna go to, like, 9 o'clock at the latest, and I might not even go past 8:30, so... You know, we have a limited amount of time to pump up those numbers. But it's okay if we don't. Maybe there can be one stream where I don't objectify myself. Like, I don't objectify my body. Jason Aldean segment just labeled country music idiot in the stream notes. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. You like my stream notes? Oh, God. Okay, I don't need this open anymore. I don't need this open anymore. Okay, this is the next thing that we're gonna talk about. Nah. I don't think that, Danny, I don't think that people even think about that. Like, this dude not realizing that, people with disabilities or kids are using those bathrooms. You know, I don't even think that people recognize that that is the other use of that space. That the men's and women's restrooms are not wheelchair accessible, for example. Jason Valdine is a country music person who performed the song, and it's under his name. He didn't actually write the song, but it's a song that's very clearly about, like, yeah, it's basically like, try that shit in a small town, see how it flies, and like, you know, don't be cussing out a cop, you know, see how far down the road you get doing that shit. And then they recorded the music video, and they put footage from the BLM protests projected onto the side of a courthouse where a black man was lynched in 1927. So, anyway. We talked about it last week. There literally was a case where someone with disabilities was getting changed by their mom and they got reported. One stream where you objectify your pet insects and bugs. So one thing, I'm gonna be moving back in with my partner in a couple months, and I am planning on, I have my new terrarium set up, and I'm gonna get the bugs moved over in there, and I think that I'm just gonna plan to have, like, bug camera, you know? So that we can, like, if I need to run to the restroom, I'll switch to bug cam. Maybe after I'm finished streaming, I'll switch to bug cam for an hour or two before the stream actually ends. Since you guys seem to like the bugs so much. I saw that, Corpse Candy! It's ironic because he also has a song he released a few years back about how he left a small town because they sucked. It's called Rearview Town. Okay, hold on. I need to, like, just experience this moment really quick. And then we will talk about the actual topic for tonight. But I am not having the best moment right now. I have cramps. I'm sorry if anybody is, like, weirded out by what's going on. My uterus is attempting to escape. So I'm just gonna kind of, like, be in that moment. It's almost over. Yeah, it's almost over. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're good. It just takes a minute. So, I hope that you guys like the bug stream when that eventually happens. I just think it would be really funny to get donations during the bug stream part of the stream, you know? Like, I just think it would be very funny. And I'm gonna put 2 different species in there together, so maybe it's gonna be a little bit of, like, maybe there'll be teams, like, people who prefer this one over the other one, and, like, oh, there's Jerry, oh, he's taking out Tim. Star-crossed lovers, true. They're gonna be fine. They're 2 different species. They'll just, one of them eventually, after a couple years, will outcompete the other. Like, one of them prefers it more dry, the other one prefers it more moist, so this terrarium is gonna be pretty moist, so maybe the ones who generally, like, yeah, plot twist, the bugs end up with higher views. Listen, I have no problem with that, because you know what that means? It means less work for me. It means I can pivot to bug streams, and it's a lot less work. The building that I work at houses multiple businesses. There are men's and women's restrooms, and then one family restroom at the back. I repeat, one family restroom at the back of the store. So many people that are not families or disabled people or trans people or etc., basically the normal workers there in the building, end up using the bathroom constantly. For the 2 trans people in the building, we are constantly having to wait for shy poopers to get the fuck out of the one bathroom that we are comfortable using. I really hate that. I really hate when people use a single stall restroom for their poops. Like, go the fuck away. It's literally not for you. If you are a regular person Like, I genuinely think that it's basically like walking into the wrong bathroom. Like, if you are a regular, like, if you're, like, I had this issue when I was in school, like, when I was in college. One of the professors would use the gender-neutral bathroom, because it would lock and everything, and it's like, if you are a cisgender man with no disabilities, you walking into my bathroom is like you walking straight into the women's bathroom. Like, it's a violation. And especially it's a violation because there's no other fucking option for me. It's not like if I was a woman and I walked into the women's room and there was a cisgender man using it, well, guess what? There's more than one stall. I'm the opposite. I will tell people to always use that room if you need it. I don't assume lots of disabilities are invisible. Sure, and I'm not saying that I would accost someone, but it's kind of like the question of, like, you know, we had the discussion on the panel about, like, service dogs, and it's like, I'm never gonna go up to someone and tell them that they're lying, but I can tell the difference between a service dog and a dog that someone has slapped a vest on, you know? Like, I know the difference. And so I can also exercise some amount of judgment. Like, with that particular teacher, I don't think he would have had any reason to need to use that restroom. Especially because, like unless you have a mobility aid, there's not a lot of reason for you to need to go into one of those gender-neutral restrooms for a disability. Because plenty of restrooms, like, have the big stall with the handle. So even if you have an invisible disability that requires, like, you have a hard time getting up and down out of the seat, like, they have that metal handle on the wall in the big stall in the men's restroom at that building. So it's like, yeah. I'm not gonna ever tell someone you shouldn't be using that bathroom. But at the same time, I don't know that I wouldn't be like, you know, I might be like, you know, that's the only bathroom that I can use, right? Like, I don't have the option to go into the men's bathroom. So if you would maybe, like, prioritize using the bathroom that's for you, that there are, like, 3 of in this building, instead of the only bathroom that I can use. Like, get the fuck out of it, actually. Like, I have a kind of problem with this. Yeah, someone tried to kick me out of one of those bathrooms, saying that the washroom is only for wheelchair users. Yeah. And that's the other thing, Shade. Like, you can make a judge, like, with the sheer number of people that go to that bathroom, there is no chance that all of those people are disabled in a way that would require them to use that bathroom over the accessible handicapped stall, disabled, handicapped, accessible, whatever, stall in the bathroom that's for their clear gender. You know, like, there can't possibly be. That's the other thing. It's like when people used to mess up my name. I had a name tag that said Luxander, and it's back before I started T, really. And people would misread it and say, like, ooh, Luxandra, or even Luxandria. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that there is such a thing as being dyslexic, right? Like, I know that there is dyslexia, right? But it was happening so often that I was like, there's no fucking way this is dyslexia. This is just, you're so fucked up by the gender appearance that you think I have, that it, like, you are incapable of mentally processing the word that you're fucking reading. And, like, here's the thing, it doesn't even just happen over reading. It also happens when you're speaking. I was introducing my brother Percy, who doesn't pass very well, to people this summer, and people, like, I'm saying Percy, this is my brother Percy, and people are, like, thinking that it's, like, Piercy or something, and, like, just fucking it. I'm like, listen with your ears. Like, with your ears. Open them, listen. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, so at a certain point, I can see that, like, yeah, like, there's no way that the number of people fucking this up is congruent with the number of dyslexic people. Also, the accessible gendered washrooms are often incorrectly labeled. There are washrooms at a hotel I went to that claimed to be accessible for people with wheelchairs, but had a push door to enter the washroom. Oh, true. Yeah, that's a big deal. I have an unusual name, and some people are allergic to understanding it, even when I directly tell them how to say it. Yeah, they're just allergic to understanding it. You know what's funny, Gayfesh? I was actually just telling my partner, I was like, I've been thinking about going to visit Seattle and like see my friend Gayfesh, whose name I do not know. like on the list of people I want to see when I'm up there is Gayfesh, a person whose name I don't actually know. But I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go visit these people at some point. What does it mean when a tweet gets 1,000 likes and no replies? I think it means Twitter is broken. One time I told a guy my name and he heard my brother's name, which does not remotely sound like my name. Does he know your brother, or was that just happenstance? Am I cool enough to be on that list? I'm probably not gonna do a big, long visiting a lot of people when I visit. But when I live up there, I'm sure that I'll meet up with all kinds of you folks. It was happenstance, but actually it's happened twice with different people? Oh, is that Discord? What's going on Discord? Oh, shit. Doe is doing a 3v3 debate with Vosh moderating right now. Should we go watch that? Should we just watch that instead of doing what I was planning on doing tonight? The first syllable rhymes, but they are different lengths, start with a different letter, and do not rhyme further beyond that. Okay, listen, yeah, I just got a ping from Demon Mama's Discord server. Where's Discord? Open it up. Discord, give it to me. Give it to me. I want to watch Doe murder some fools. I'm like, what is the subject of the debate? I want to know. This sounds fun. Oh, this is a nice surprise. Oh, this makes me happy. Okay, I'm trying to get Discord to be not stupid. Why are you being dumb, Discord? Open, please. Dude, why? Okay, thank you. Take me back to the Demon Mama server so I can click this link, motherfucker. Doe. Oh, it's on political violence. Oh, yes!
I'm not saying all of your resources.
There's a flip side. There's a flip side to this that you're very quickly, and then we'll let you go. There's a flip side to this.
Okay, so we have President Sunday, Doe on Demon Mama's setup. I don't know who all of these other people are. Okay.
What constitutes a violent or a non-violent protest is itself radically determined on whether or not, for example, they can people doing the study consider armed versus unarmed to be the distinguishing factor between violent versus non-violent, or whether, for example, windows being targeted versus persons being targeted indicates violent versus non-violent. And the bare fact of one or two people out of a crowd of 100,000 smashing a window somewhere can be taken up by the media and used to color a completely peaceful protest, a completely non-violent protest, as violent nonetheless.
To be clear, it's not finished.
Way, you still find yourself in the reverse situation, in which a non-violent protest can be very easily manipulated optically to look like a violent protest, regardless of how disciplined it actually is. And indeed, this did happen
Doe is still blocked?
with MLK's
Why?
protests too.
Well,
Didn't MLK make his job easier by being disciplined with his
shoot.
with his
Okay,
people?
hold on. Let me see.
Wasn't that why he preached discipline? Like MLK preached and spent so much effort in organizing basically extremely disciplined protesters.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. He didn't just organize discipline and nonviolence with his protesters. He also orchestrated the protests, and this is one of the reasons why Malcolm X detested MLK.
There's just no way this
he
is
also
going to work
orchestrated
right
a situation in which the most innocent of his protesters, including children, would be in direct confrontations with the police.
Go back here and let me change it over here.
Result in an appalling display to horrify the public. So it's
Isn't he just putting something on display that's already happening in that state, though?
No,
he was creating the conditions for that violence to be put on display. Like that was part of the explicit. No, but that was part of the explicit strategy. Was to it was a martyrdom strategy where you go out there and you get beat up in order to draw sympathy.
Can we watch from the beginning?
That was
it was a martyrdom strategy.
I guess it doesn't matter if we watch live. Okay.
That's the pick is. Picture in picture.
Okay, here we go.
I think.
All right, we're all friends here. Wait, what's the? Hold on, fill me in on the context. Okay, how hot are we coming in?
Well, we intend to publicly strip Wick body and soul down to the metaphysical bones. He will never stream again.
All right. All right. Okay. All right. Wick, how do you feel about that?
I am eager for him to try. It's been a while since I've been able.
Who are all these people? I mean, different streamers. So I know President Sunday. I don't know Wick. I don't know Professor Meat. I don't know who this person is, and that's Doe. We're here to watch Doe.
To take the gloves off, so to speak. And it's not often that I actually get to participate in these things. I'm usually hosting these things. So I appreciate you stepping in this role.
Loader
so that
box.
I can,
Okay.
as I said, take the gloves
Alright,
off.
loaner box?
Okay, seriously though, what's the debate topic?
We are debating, I would presume, whether nonviolence or violence in protest or political resistance is either efficacious or ethically permissible.
Okay.
Vosh is not
Seems like a
racist.
fair representation.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It's
Right?
me.
I will. We'll suss this out in the opening statements, I'm sure. But I guess the TLDR it.
Loaner
Is
box. Okay, so that's
political
loaner
violence
box.
acceptable? In
Loaner
other
box is the one that had the terrible debate with poly people, right? Poly people. Chat, I'm pretty sure that guy in the center second row is gay. What? No. Is it Vunch? Is it Whoosh? Wee? I don't know. He's also had questionable takes on trans folk and sports. Calm the fuck down about Vosh. I'm trans, and everything he has ever said about trans people is like, he's basically come around to realizing that he's dumb when he has said dumb shit, or he's more correct and more informed than most other cis people. Calm down. I don't consider anyone involved in this straight. Like, the fact that you're participating in this debate at all.
what conditions will be the debate? Right?
All right. Now, whose side would like to go first?
I think. Oh, that's a good question. Should we just flip a coin, or do we have a?
Okay, well, Bill, I'll just say I'll go first if you want. We'll start this.
Do you guys have?
Anyone has an
It's
issue?
fine by me.
Yeah. Also, should
ping pong.
yeah, we
I'm
should,
joining the fight against political violence on the side
one
of
person
violence.
from one side goes with their opening statement, and then the next person from another side goes. That makes sense.
No, people
Whatever
seem
you
to be
wanna do.
confused by this proposal. I didn't see much much comprehension there.
Okay, the proposal
Okay,
is that,
hang on. Sorry. So what's being suggested is that
No trouble.
Wick goes first, then someone from our team, then someone from his team, and so on.
Okay. Just gonna write this out so we have it all well in order. So, okay, Sunday. And who said they wanted to go first?
Wick did. So
Wick wants to go first. Fantastic. So then we'll go Wick, and then who on the other?
Logistics.
Flip me in serious, and I'm down with it.
Sure. Okay. So me, Serious Doe, Wick. I'll do it for.
Well,
Whenever you want to
Start fighting.
over the last few years about. Fair
Here.
enough. Okay. So hi. Today I will be talking about political violence. There has been much to do over the last few years about the efficacy or morality of violence in protests, violence in riots, if you will, and violence in political activism in general. Many people have pointed to the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement had riots and things like that, and this was, they would quote MLK, rights are the voice of the unheard. Therefore, we shouldn't be telling people how to protest whose rights are being stripped from them or rights are being taken away from them. I am sympathetic to that. However, I believe that if we want to see serious change, then the data suggests, and intuitively we can figure this out, that nonviolent civil resistance is the path forward. I am not here to argue that violence never works or is never necessary. That's not
this
my
is gonna be great.
argument. My argument is simply that civil resistance is more effective both in democracies and in authoritarian governments, and has been since post-World War II.
Oh,
I
what
think
a
that this
fucking
is a
idiot.
clear
I can't wait for
situation
Joe
where
to
if
tear
you
this
want
asshole a
to
new one.
get change done and accomplished, the best way to do that is through nonviolent means. And I would contrast that with
Mama,
peaceful
you
means,
almost
because
made me spill all my water.
does not mean peaceful. Nonviolent civil
I was gonna
resistance
eat him
does
alive.
create conflict. It does put pressure on various actors and institutions.
Coming up.
Am I 2 minutes up?
just about it.
Okay, I'll just end it at this. So again, if
Oh,
we're
this is
serious about
fun.
wanting to help people achieve political change, nonviolence is what we should advocate for.
Okay. And rolling to the other team.
I guess I'll just start right now. Thank you, first of all, Vosh, for agreeing to host this. I really appreciate it. Of course. So I take the question with which tonight's debate is concerned to be twofold: whether nonviolent or violent resistance is more politically efficacious, and whether the use of violence is permissible ethically. The very terms in which both questions are given are highly problematic, and indeed heavily problematized by the literature on political resistance, which, due to the ambiguity inherent in this word violence, is recently moving away from framing such questions in terms of a violence-nonviolence dichotomy, and is
I
rather
love
concerned
Prez.
with differences of outcome between armed and unarmed political resistance. Given such ambiguities, the claim my side has to defend is comparatively modest and easily defended. Whether or not the
Is it too
discipline of avoidance
fast?
of violence has been efficacious in some case or other, the classic examples being the Satyagraha movement of Gandhi and the civil rights movement, these are not sufficient to take violence off the table in all or even most cases. For instance, although studies often find that violent resistance can hinder the success of nonviolent movements, leaving aside the ambiguity and inconsistency with which the term violence is treated, this conclusion is frequently arrived at by collapsing the aims of violent fringes, quote-unquote, with that of the larger mainstream movement, potentially erasing the identities and goals
It's mirrored
of what are,
so
in
that
fact,
we can
distinct
see
movements
dough.
themselves. Further, if we consider the success
if it's
of such
not mirrored,
movements
then
as
dough is
MLK
hidden.
and Gandhi to be worth the human cost of even some deliberate violence to attain, dogmatically taking violence off the table in all cases would be both anti-pragmatic and unethical. This becomes more obvious when one considers the prior or adjacent violence, which also contributes to political outcomes alongside nonviolent movements, for example, that of the Indian National Army, which made the continued domination of India seem increasingly costly and untenable. In short, while nonviolence is of course always desirable, no sane person would advocate on behalf of violence for its own sake. Violence cannot be written off either strategically or ethically without also deciding that the cause of any movement which cannot prevail without violence is de facto forfeit due to an implicit preference for state power. State power, of course, being enforced by definition with violence. Thank you.
All right, and rolling
I love
back
this
to the other
like
side. Loner
timed
Box or
thing
Professor
we're
Lee,
doing
who would
here.
prefer?
I'll go.
All right.
Obvious thing is that everyone from any political persuasion does support violence in some form, right? It just depends on where and when and in what context. For example, I think there's always this impression that people give of liberals as being very averse to violence and more pursuing like civility politics and nonviolence, but that's not even entirely true. If you look at the Ukraine war, liberals are they're a united front on arming the fuck out of Ukraine and pushing Russians all the way out. Whereas if you ask people on the left, who would normally expect to be more violent on that issue, they're like, it's a coin flip of whether or not they're okay with that or if they want to get Ukraine to cede land in exchange for peace. So it depends on where and when. I think because of what
are there seriously leftists who think that Ukraine should cede to an invasion, they should cede to an unprovoked invasion? That seems insane to me. What the fuck? Just red fash. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But on Twitter a few weeks ago, I was looking at I looked at the whole essay of MLK's letter from Birmingham jail. There's one bit in there that I think is really surprising, not the white moderate bit, but the part where he talks about how he himself, he's rejecting the claim that he's an extremist because he talks about how he himself feels like he has to be a moderating voice between complacency on one end of the black community and violence on the other, being the Nation of Islam and black nationalists. And he even says that he's really concerned that if the black nationalist movement grows, then America would descend into a racial nightmare, is what he says. And if you look at MLK's activism, it's like he was incredibly strict and very, very nuanced in his political tactics. He
why are you making them even smaller?
After they would first exhaust all negotiations with legislators in their particular states that they were going for, and then after that, if that failed, they would go through what was called self-purification, where they would drill people down on the ethics of nonviolence, the morality of it, the pragmatism of it. They would collect knives and weapons from protesters before marches to make sure that no one lashed out. And if you look at that, those 10 years from 1955 to 65, they achieved more in that period than in the 100 years before that. And all those groups, NAACP, SNCC, CORE, SCLC, they all did it by adhering to nonviolence. So, yeah.
Okay. And as we are rolling back around, Doe or Sirius, your preference? Sunday, we're getting some noise from your mic.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Is it me?
I believe it was Sunday's mic. Or maybe it wasn't. Well, whatever the case. Doe or Sirius, whoever would prefer.
All right, I'm next up. All right. So when debating the question of nonviolent resistance, its proponents tacitly assume the role of event organizer, where they're in full control of the tactics used by a social movement.
This person literally wrote a script. This person wrote an actual script. Are you hearing this person just read off of something they prepared? Oh my god.
To think in terms of efficiency, a logic of getting the most out of every movement action. However, this sort of thinking tends to miss the organic and unplanned nature of violent action. Whether we like it or not, violence will always be a part of every social movement. The question, then, should be how we think and talk about violence amongst ourselves and to the public. While scholars are often split on the outcomes of violent action, finding differential positive and negative effects depending on the study or classification of violence, one thing they tend to agree on is the fact that what people perceive as violent.
I don't know if this was planned or if it was more impromptu.
It's highly dependent on the nature of the protest movement and the way it's framed by those who talk about it.
It's because it's the one person who doesn't have a face who's talking.
Studies consistently find that the framing of a protest event as violent will lessen support for the cause it represents, regardless of the actual nature of the protest. The same event can engender either positive or negative attitudes depending on if it's contextualized as violent.
Am I gonna stay
Moreover,
up late tonight?
scholars consistently find that the perception of nonviolence is dependent on the composition of the protest movement. In the American context, racial minorities are the prime example. Protests comprised mostly of racial minorities are more likely to be seen as violent, even when people are assured that the protests were peaceful. All this is to say that as members of a given social movement, the question of tactical efficacy is almost irrelevant. Tactics emerge outside of any single person's control. In the event of such violence, then, our energy should not be put towards policing our own, but towards seizing and reframing the narrative. Once you've allowed your opposition, those with all the power, to set the terms of engagement, you've lost. It is neither just nor efficient to allow oppressors to dictate the terms of oppression.
So wait, has there only been one person who is against state violence, or sorry, against political violence so far? Like, Wick was against it, Sunday was for it. I kind of wasn't paying a lot of attention to Lonerbox, if I'm being completely honest with you. But then this person who just came in is also saying that they support it. And then Doe is probably going to support political violence. And then this last person, I guess, might be against it. I don't know.
Thank you. Up next, Professor
It's feeling
Meek.
stacked is all I'm saying.
What's up, y'all? So it doesn't
Meeks.
seem like the efficacy of violent protest is taken too seriously in academia, which, to be fair, is some of the criticisms of previous research that was in the sort of steel-manning papers of the position that I was able to find. With little evidence I could find.
Lonerbox had a stupid point about how liberals are actually more in support of political violence, which is undermined by him being completely wrong. Well, I mean, liberals really are in support of political violence. Liberals support, like, the practice of sweeping through homeless encampments, right? Isn't that, like, one of the things about neoliberalism? That, like, it is heavily reliant on state violence to enforce it, right? Excuse me. So many people who claim to be against violence forget that their granddads had boxes of Nazi ears under the bed. Yeah.
Science has a variety of like pretty major flaws that makes it mostly irrelevant as far as I can tell at best, and even taking that out of the equation, doesn't really support even if I disregard that of the evidence that I can find, doesn't really support the conclusion. As far as I can tell, it's one of the most fundamental like building blocks of society. This idea that like one of the most fundamental appeals of a society, of a civilization, is the idea that you are free from the fear of people coming along and saying, we're gonna fuck your shit up if you don't give us what we want. That's a little crude way of saying it, but I don't really I think that people don't want to live in that world, whether or not they even realize it. I think we
do live in that world. I'm so sorry, but we do live in that world where not only can a cop come and fuck up your day anytime, i.e. the reason why I can't use public restrooms anymore, regardless of which cities in Kansas have decided to declare a sanctuary state, that doesn't prevent cops from doing crazy shit. Or like, you know, like white supremacists can do violence against people without backlash. Like they finally charged that white guy who choked out and killed a black man in front of a bunch of people in broad daylight on a subway, you know? Like they did eventually come after that guy, but initially they questioned him and then let him go because officially, unofficially speaking, violence against those kind of people is accepted and tacitly endorsed. So like this guy's point is like, ooh, we don't want to live in a society where like violence could be visited upon you at any moment with little provocation. Like, no, dude, we already live in that society. Anyway,
intellectualize this issue in a way that sort of makes this out of touch, because I don't really, when I imagine people in the population, I don't really see these people that would be moved by violent protest. I don't really see, even the most fearful among us are more likely to go save me daddy government than to say, we'll give these people what they want so that we're going to stop. And even if you're going to argue that violence gets attention to your cause, I don't really see that as a justification for violence, even if it's true in practice, because it seems more like a justification for laziness. Because all that tells to me when I hear that is that
it doesn't seem to me
really be any reason to believe that violence is the only way to gain attention to your cause.
I love it so much.
Even if that's a justification, not to put words in anyone's mouth, that's merely a reason that movements that otherwise might be violent ought to be more creative. Any countercultural phenomenon has a natural burden beyond reproach, but wishes to best succeed. If you're trying to dissolve or overthrow an authority or a government, then obviously, like in the case of an actual revolution, violence makes sense. But outside those bounds, I don't think violence is sort of antithetical to sensible protest, as far as I can tell.
Please,
okay,
Doe.
Proponents of nonviolence are almost universally not proponents of nonviolence. They are instead majority-minded people who see democracy itself as a greater goal than the plight of any oppressed minority peoples. Martyrdom is the nonviolence dogmatist's path towards justice, especially martyrdom of others. Oppressed peoples are made to play the role of martyr, submit to oppression publicly until the majority's mind is changed. Justice is made when the majority changes its legal structures. Liberal theorists on civil disobedience tell us how much more important it is that the authority structures of the majority are not threatened than the suffering of oppressed peoples defending themselves. Oppressed peoples should be more thoughtful about the sensibilities of the majority, they say, or else is implied. This is not a politics of nonviolence. This is a politics of our violence. The most obvious place to see this at play is in the research done into nonviolence nonviolent resistance. Despite whatever other problems that arise in trying to delineate violence from nonviolence, damage to property is treated as violence consistently throughout these studies, leaving the construction of property completely out of the frame. The construction of a world by those in seats of power, like strapping murderous highways across every nation, forcing the majority of people to become reliant on cars, machines which poison the air and slaughter 3,700 people and over 1 million vertebrate animals a day, are treated as nonviolent, completely neutral acts. This is the false thesis. We do not see the sensibilities of the majority as a worthy metric for justice, and as such, our allegiance cannot be to nonviolence, legalist structures, or any other political technology deployed to privilege some over others. Our allegiance remains to justice. And it is not just to dogmatically let the innocent get abused.
I would, I guess we're doing opens now. We could just kind of go with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Very quickly before you go
for you?
Doe, I think Doe did not run out its time. Like, Doe didn't even get the 20. Yeah, everybody pack your bags. Just pack it up. Just pack it up. All right, we're good. Later. Like, it's over now. Is there literally anything else that needs to be said? Of course, people are going to argue the point, even though Doe is 100% of the time correct. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen Doe be wrong about something. Genuinely. I would be surprised to ever see... I mean, I'm sure that it's happened. Doe is a human being. It is not perfect, but I'm just saying, like, it really polishes its ideas before stating them. And so that's one of those things. Like, I do similar things where, like, I think about my ideas a lot before I state them. So, like, yeah, like, you know, Doe pronouns, it pronouns. I'm literally gonna steal that if I can remember the right paraphrasing. True. Yeah, absolutely smashed.
Really quickly.
Hang on. I got one for Vosh.
Well, I've got one from
No,
me.
but it's a technical. It's
Technical thing. Okay, technical. Right, go ahead.
Technical.
Yes, Professor Mead is very quiet. Is there any way you can boost your volume?
Yeah.
That is technical. As for everyone talking, 3v3 is a lot of people. Try not to shout over each other too much. If necessary, then we'll start doing turns. But ideally, you could go back and forth without that being necessary. Go on ahead.
Yeah, I'll just real quick, like the idea of justice. I want to touch on that.
It's a very
There's
bisexual
two things that
shirt.
were said that I want to touch on briefly.
I
The
love
first
it.
is Sirius. I'll go in the order. Sirius mentioned that a lot of the problems with violence is it happens organically. It's not organized. It just kind of happens. You can't really control it. I think that's one of the main issues with violence and violent protests, and is because we know that organization wins in these cases. The more organized, the more tactical, the more coherent a group or a advocacy, minority or whatever is, the more likely they are to succeed. And what violence is a poor tool of communication. No one really knows what you're trying to say. All they're seeing is the big explosions or the bloody noses. And this is why, again, while it might not be just that people have to suffer, it's reality. And this is how the world works.
Okay, so then what should we do when violence inevitably happens in a protest movement? What should we do about it?
Condemn it vociferously.
Why?
Yeah, why? That seems like a waste of our resources. Like, are we going to go out on the streets and protest the protesters? It seems like our resources are better spent reframing the narrative so that people don't see it as violent.
I mean, typically the leaders would just, when they've got the next chances, they would say they condemn the riots. I mean, even language of the unheard, in that speech, he condemns violence. Like, it's not like you have to make a new protest against it, right?
You are presuming, though, the presence of an extremely charismatic and influential individual who's
I'm
capable of actually rallying.
I'm sorry. That's really wrong, isn't it? Like I don't, like he said, I don't remember all of the whole quote and the context, but I don't think that Dr. King condemned political violence when he said that a riot is the language of the unheard. Like, he's literally saying, yeah, what the fuck do you expect? Like, I'm sorry, wait. I haven't ever read Dr. King's work or actually pored over his speeches at all, but like, I feel like my brain is about to leak out of my ears just from like Lonerbox and Wick both. Like, I'm gonna laugh at Wick a lot. That's gonna be fun. Oh my god, let's strap in, lads. We're gonna be here for a while.
An entire protest around a single program. When you're not in that kind of situation, it seems to me that you do in fact end up simply protesting the protest again, undercutting the momentum of whatever they both have in common.
He didn't advocate for it, but he didn't condemn it, which is what Lonerbox claimed just then. Lonerbox claimed that Dr. King condemned violent protest, but I don't think he ever did.
If you're talking civil rights, that's not entirely the case, because it wasn't just MLK and the SCLC, right? It was also the NAACP, it was the SNCC, it was CORE, it was most of them, right? With most of these organizations, some of them did flip towards like a self-defense approach, which is more nuanced, but yeah, they were mostly nonviolent.
You clearly have a much more nuanced. You clearly have a much more developed understanding of the details of that case.
The interview that quote is from was actually messed up because they lied about a lot of things and took him out of context. I forget which magazine it was exactly, but it was a recent thing we uncovered. So, like, they sat down and did an interview in person, but then they misquoted him a bunch. Anyway, let's keep going. This is going to take forever.
But be that as it may, nonetheless, in the absence of these, you still find yourself in that situation. If you don't have organizations with legitimacy and the sort of unitary pull to kind of adhere a multifaceted, widespread group to a single program of action, discipline and nonviolence becomes impossible. And so as a consequence of this, when a violence inevitably occurs, if you actually allocate all of your resources towards protesting that, you've undercut the momentum of your movement. There's no way around that.
True.
I think...
even if we were to accept theoretically, right, this idea that like, which I mean, I think is sort of inevitably true. Like even for my side's belief system, if we were to say that, well, let's just convince everyone that they weren't actually violent, well, sure, I'm sure that would, like, even according to our worldview, of course that would increase support for it. But doesn't that seems to me that regardless of whether or not that's the case, it seems to me that.
First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. Oh wait, no, why are we doing this? Why are we doing white moderate? That's not the quote that I was hoping for. White moderate. Like, yeah, I know that he condemned, like, white people who weren't condemning racism. Specifically, they wanted him to look like he was against Malcolm X and the Black Panthers when he actually had a very nuanced take. Yeah, like, white history has propped Dr. King up as, like, the sensible alternative to, violent people like Malcolm X. And, like, and yet they still fucking murdered him. Yet, like, literally the CIA murdered Dr. King. And then, like, they have abused his image to undercut a lot of the messages that he was ultimately sending anyway. Oh yeah, being against political violence is valuing order over justice. Okay, I see what you mean, Corpse Candy. Thank you very much. I appreciate that contribution.
That is simply another reason why more peaceful protests would be better. I'm not saying there are all of your resources.
There's a flip side. There's a flip
it-
side to this that you're very quickly in the labor code. There's a flip side to this that you're not considering, and that's that even in the event of quote unquote nonviolent protests and the studies that you could refer to in order to determine whether or not nonviolent versus violent quote unquote protests are more efficacious, oftentimes what constitutes a violent or a nonviolent protest is itself radically determined on whether or not, for example, they can people doing the study consider armed versus unarmed to be the distinguishing factor between violent versus nonviolent, or whether, for example, windows being targeted versus persons being targeted indicates violent versus nonviolent. And the bare fact of one or two people out of a crowd of 100,000 smashing a window somewhere can be taken up by the media and used to color a completely peaceful protest, a completely nonviolent protest, as violent nonetheless. And so either way, you still find yourself in the reverse situation, which a nonviolent protest can be very easily manipulated optically to look like a violent protest, regardless of how disciplined it actually is. And indeed, this did happen with MLK's protest too.
True.
Isn't that back up?
MLK his job easier by being disciplined with his people?
That reminded me of, like, when you're in Discord and you're having a heated discussion and like then you can see at the bottom of the screen it says like several people are typing. It's just like, oh god. Tangent. Okay, I see. All right.
Isn't that why he preached discipline? Like MLK preached and spent so much effort in organizing basically extremely disciplined protesters.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. He didn't just organize discipline and nonviolence with his protesters. He also orchestrated the protests, and this is one of the reasons why Malcolm X detested MLK. He also orchestrated a situation in which the most innocent of his protesters, including children, would be in direct confrontations with the police and result in an appalling display to horrify the public. So it's a
Isn't
bit
he
more...
just putting something on display that's already happening in that state, though?
No, he was creating the conditions for that violence to be put on display. Like that was part of the explicit. No, but that was part of the explicit strategy. Was to it was a martyrdom strategy where you go out there and you get beat up in order to draw sympathy towards your cause. That was
it was a martyrdom strategy, but it wasn't passive. Sorry, Lauren.
No, but you're referencing Project C, where they wanted to fill up. It was Bull Connor in Birmingham. They wanted to fill up his jail with kids. I'm pretty sure King objected to that, but it was adopted anyway. But yeah, you're right. Like they did basically say go and confront very racist and very aggressive cops and just let them hit you. But I think their tactic as well was they would specifically get the more seasoned like veterans of the movement to stand in front so they could absorb the blows. So this whole thing about like throwing kids is maybe a little bit like that was like that. I think that happened once. It was even very controversial within the movement.
How much of the stream is watching this Vosh VOD? Well, this is not a VOD. First of all, it's live, but we're just behind because we didn't know about it until after. So we are watching a live stream just like behind by 20 minutes or so, and it's probably going to be the rest of the stream. I guess we already streamed for like 2 hours before we started watching this, so and I completely did not get around to talking about the thing in the title of the stream, so we'll probably end up talking about that next time on Thursday. King did object to that. I researched that recently. King was against the Children's March because he did not believe in endangering black kids. Yeah, that's fair. The tactic in general was to do this martyrdom thing, which is what Doe brought up.
So I think we're talking around the issue here, and that's of organization. Yes, if you're
Doe is like me. Doe doesn't cut in unless it has like a bomb to drop, and I love that about it.
Is disorganized and has no central leadership and no central kind of drive, it's less likely to succeed whether it's violent or not. It just is, right? There are so many benefits to having a coherent community coalesce around a single banner, basically, even if it's multiple groups. This can't be understated. And violence, to be clear, is divisive in that way. It will automatically gatekeep who can participate in the protest.
I don't think that that's true, Wick, because from what I've read, it seems like violence offers another.
I'm sorry, this person has a very unfortunate Ben Shapiro voice. I feel bad. I feel bad for them.
Alternative way of expressing discontent that isn't available to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people don't have the time or energy to join like a disciplined protest movement, but they might have the time to like get off and like go out onto the streets to riot just on one day.
If you aren't strong, if you aren't able to enact violence, and most people aren't. Let's be clear. Kids, elderly, these people generally can't do violence on the same level that I could. Or
I mean, so long as destruction of property is considered violent, I'm pretty sure each and every one of those can sabotage plenty of things without much effort.
Well, Wick, you seem to have this conception of an effective violent protest. No, hang on. You seem to have this notion of an effective violent protest as being like the 300 Spartans at the front line of a rally in the street. But violent protest incorporates more than just actually going fisticuffs with the cops toe to toe, right? So, for example, Gandhi's Satyagraha movement, I can never play.
That's another question, yeah. Can a movement be seen as nonviolent if violence is used against their members, right? Oh wait, is one of these people, that's aristocracy? Oh, I didn't know that was aristocracy. Okay. Oh wait, no, are you talking about something else? IMO, if you want to be violent in protest to injustice, you need to officially declare war, either as an individual or collective, and follow the Geneva Conventions in your actions. Get fucked, Eris. Dude. Oh my god. Hold on, where's my tabs? Here we go.
Was itself committed to nonviolence, but it was massively aided by the fact that the Indian National Army...
No, we haven't gone over the title topic. I was about to start on the title topic when this came up, and I was like, this is much more fun than what I was about to talk about, so I should probably change the stream title, but I'm not going to.
So bombing and assassinating the British during that entire time, making the holding of India seem increasingly unpopular. That aided in the efficacy of Gandhi's movement. Now
you can point to one-offs where that might be true, but I'm talking in general. We're talking about generalities.
No, but the generality is on my side.
Yeah, even in general, Erica Chenoweth, who is your primary source, Chenoweth, she recently wrote a paper where she said that violent flanks of the movement have mixed effects. That it isn't just straightforwardly about positive or negative, that there's both positive and negative effects to having a violent but unarmed section, which is what riots are. Riots are violent but unarmed.
So the problem here, again, is when we want a movement to succeed, right, whether it be in an authoritarian regime, such as the Balkans or things like that, with the Butcher, Butcher of the Balkans.
Someone who I've seen in my chat before is over at Vosh's Instead right now. Oh well.
Very violent, very repressive regime there. And then we have democracies, such as America, right, back in the 60s and even today. In both cases, what violence does is it keeps people from participating because so many people are just naturally, instinctually, intuitively disinclined to do violence towards the people around them. That's just a natural
I think this guy doesn't
so
understand
you
that
see people
we're not starting the violence most of the time.
When you come across a person...
What was that facial expression that Doe just made? Hold on.
Intuitively disinclined to do violence towards the people around them. That's just a natural state. And so when you see people getting...
That's the natural state. It was the natural state that Doe made a face. Next time they're here, we're gonna gang up on them for abandoning you for Vosh. Takes on the Children's March are actually part of why I hate Anna Kasparian. She said that trans people needed to do what black people did and, quote, show their humanity to get civil rights, and that pissed me off because the Children's March did move people, but it moved people because grown men were beating up little school kids. I do not respect a cis woman who implies, yo, trans people, if you want civil rights, let cis bigots brutalize your kids. Right. Some people have an extremely open definition of what violence is. which can include simply people blocking a sidewalk or a road. People forget that protests are supposed to be disruptive and unpleasant. Well, yeah, that's part of the point of this debate, and it's part of what's going to become frustrating about it very quickly, is that, like, one of the things that you need to do in a conversation like this is establish what you fucking mean when you say violent. Like, that's, and like, this is the kind of thing that I would want to pitch in on, like, if I were present for a conversation like this, is like, y'all need to define violence. If you're against it or if you're for it, like, define what that means. And like, Wick seems to not be getting either that, like, yeah, he's like, oh, violence is inherently divisive. It's, you know, people don't want to turn up to a protest if you're planning on being violent. Like, you know, there's another reason why I don't go to protests, and it's because I don't want violence visited upon me by the police, because they almost always start it. So yeah, it's like, Wick thinks all violence is offensive. Yeah, the concept that you could be doing defensive violence and that defensive violence could in fact be necessary.
Person, you have no context, you don't know what's going on, you see one person beating the shit out of the other.
Yeah, it's not a want. That's true too. Most people don't want to commit violence, as if minority groups have a choice. It's not a want. Yeah, like, I don't want to leave the part of the country that I was born in and become a refugee, but I'm going to because I have to. I don't want to have to smash someone's face in who tried to attack me, but I fucking will. Like, I have to think about that shit sometimes, you know, when you're like, oh, this could be a potentially dangerous situation. Like, if this person passing by me on the sidewalk decides to try to, like, drag me off into the woods, like, what am I gonna do about it? Like, yeah. There was a trans man beaten by a cop in LA for giving him the bird when he saw the officer berating a black woman just recently. I think I saw that, yeah. I think I retweeted it even, but I haven't had the chance to cover it yet. I'm getting to a place where I'm like, I have to be selective about what I cover, because I actually don't have enough time during streams to cover everything. And, consequently, I also don't have the time and energy to edit all of those things into stuff to go on the channel. So I'm gonna have to probably be a little bit discerning. But that is one that I would like to talk about. A trans man beaten by a cop in LA. Those of us who go black bloc only engage in defensive violence. Punching a Nazi is absolutely defensive violence. Yeah.
Most people's instinct are to defend the person who's being beat up. Whether or not the person deserved getting hit, that doesn't come into play. We don't know. We don't see. So when we talk about framing narratives, you're right.
So he's saying, okay, if we be violence toward the cops, then it's going to increase sympathy toward the cops. But cops being violent towards protesters doesn't increase sympathy towards protesters. People view it as justified. This guy is such a fucking lib brain.
That there are certain groups out there who will frame anything as violent, no matter how small, how limited, anything like that, but it does us no service to stand in front of a burning building and preach how things are mostly peaceful. That was a gift to the people against your movement. It was a gift to the people who oppose what you want to see. And we can't let that happen. We just have to call balls and strikes. And if things are violent, we condemn it. And when things aren't, we say, no, you're wrong. But people have to trust us. And right now they don't.
And the thing with BLM, though, you were talking about the idea of having to have like very seasoned protesters to make sure that it stays very like well behaved. But like BLM protesters were not like well trained, but they were mostly peaceful. And also, how many videos did we watch of antagonists within BLM protests trying to instigate violence? Even that weird guy with the fucking black over his head who was smashing those windows, and everyone tried to stop him. Like, that's what they mean. But that's what if I say condemning violence within your movement, that's what I mean, right? Like, just you see it, you stop it, and definitely don't like try to adopt it as a strategy unless you're in like.
Do you mean as opposed to like the literally like 900 videos of loving this debate about BLM, including no black? It's not a debate about BLM. It's a debate about political violence, and it just so happens that BLM is an instance of like they're invoking Dr. King because we're invoking the concept of like a strategy of political violence versus political nonviolence. Like, but yes, the conversation focusing in so hard on black people right now and there not being a black person to discuss it obviously like is a little bit weird. But like, yeah, hopefully they get off of this specific topic at some point. Like, again, maybe go on to define what violence is and what it means. And, like, maybe if there are ever types of, like, can we talk about if defensive violence is acceptable? Okay, well then, like, let's establish what defensive violence is. Anyway.
South Africa or something, you know, when it's like when everything else has been exhausted.
So wait, that one guy that people tried to stop, should they physically try to stop him?
Maybe, yeah. Or just gather around him, film him.
Well, it depends on the context. If he's like beating up babies, yeah, stop.
If he's if he's maybe smashing up windows, just like film him, catch him doing it, try to identify him for the police.
So just to be clear,
wait, you want to identify protesters?
No, just very quickly. So just to be clear, you guys are entirely in line with protesters engaging in violence, provided it's only targeting people who are identified as other protesters.
But we think totally differently about defensive violence versus escalating to violence, right?
What it is violence. Like if I forcibly stop somebody from smashing a window, that is violence. You can.
Scale. There's a. Do you not just let me quick? Serious. Do you not understand the difference between someone hitting someone in the face and someone stopping someone from hitting someone?
Wait, can I ask?
Oh no! In this case, it would actually be. Oh, actually, Doe, you can go. You can go.
I was gonna say, can you see the difference between like cars murdering 1 million vertebrates every single day and someone I don't know. What's the number of things you could do? Sabotaging a car plant,
blowing up a car plant is more violent than a car existing.
I didn't say blowing up. I said sabotage. Sabotage is very, very, very. There's a large range of things you can do, but like, yeah. So murdering animals, just like 3,700 people every day, murdering them is less violent than stopping a car company from producing cars.
Just to come back to the question about the guy smashing windows, I think what was the most common thing to respond to that was basically.
I hate when that happens. I can't scream. It's like 8:30 at night. I hate when this happens. Like that people. That like Doe just made a really good point, and then people are just gonna fucking ignore it completely because it's femme. Like don't catch it wrong. Like don't get it wrong. That's what just happened. People are just gonna completely ignore the very good point that Doe said because it was like an argument destroying point, and nobody's going to acknowledge that it even said anything. I'm gonna fucking
People just let them know that they were on their own, that they didn't represent the movement. It was showed on camera to show the public that this isn't like what we're for, and then the person fucked off, and they would just boo them or something. That was like the most common thing.
Look, that's fair, and I don't think any of us would contend against, for example, a protest maintaining some level of order or standards of conduct within their group. But when we're talking about directing your attention towards condemning protest violence, we're not talking about one or two people, which will exist in every single movement or can be projected to exist in every single movement, regardless of the explicit policy, no matter how carefully it's enforced within the movement. We're talking about other movements that are alongside, looking towards the same ends. They're engaging in different strategies. So, for example, there is one movement that is dogmatically against any kind of physical altercation, even in self-defense. That'd be the MLK strategy. There's another one that's like, well, no, if the cops bash against us, we bash them back, we maintain our bodily integrity, etc., etc. If you direct your resources against that group, you're effectively giving propagandistic fodder to the other group, which can then paint the movement as a whole as intrinsically violent, except for some of the good ones. You see the problem?
So the problem is, at least in the MLK movement, right? If we're going to use a civil, I think that's the one that people go to because they're most familiar with it. But we have data to suggest that even when violence was started by the police and then the people simply fought back, that still ended up being kind of a wash in effectiveness. Like, and people tend to decide with the state. Just that's their bias, right? And we can say that's not fair, that's not just. I agree, but that's generally what happens. And I think most of what we're going to get to here is the other side is saying, well, I can give you a source, right? But it was a study done in very recently, basically, that showed that basically the riots led to the election, the 68 riots specifically.
The civil rights movement isn't a great example simply for the reason that the Civil Rights Act was being tied up for years before Kennedy was assassinated. And then a more savvy politician in Lyndon B. Johnson came in and managed to get it pushed through.
What do you mean it was being tied up?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
I think Kennedy introduced it in the same year he was killed, no?
No, not unless I'm very mistaken.
He took it to Congress in 63, right?
He took it to Congress in 63, but the historical record, I believe, is that Lyndon B. Johnson was actually successful in pushing it through, and that it was being tied up by the Democrats at the time. I'd have to get the particulars though, so I'm going to claim the same thing that Wick just did.
Okay.
Yeah. Either way, I think that what we're going to get to here is a difference in what we want the world to be versus what the world is. I would love to live in a world where, yes, people were able to suss out the nuance of violence in an event and like understand that not everyone who is being violent is necessarily in the wrong, but that's not the world we actually live in. The world we actually live in,
Can we please talk about the self-defense aspect,
They want
please?
Stability more than anything else. And when you threaten that stability, or you appear to threaten that stability, they are going to largely side against you. So what you need to do is to demonstrate that the people you are going against are the ones that are threatening your stability. And the best way to do that, like it or not, is the martyr strategy. It is to have people beat you up, get shown on TV.
Okay, so sorry to...
So you gotta mute yourself.
Sorry to cut off this Braveheart speech, but
You're
very
just straight
quickly.
up laughing at people. You can't.
Was Kennedy had this referred to the Rules Committee. Lyndon B. Johnson had this brought before the Senate, and that was the key difference here. So Johnson made a different move than Kennedy did, which resulted in the bill actually being pushed into effect, as opposed to being held up in debate.
And I think also, Lyndon B. Johnson had a massive majority when he ran on civil rights, because by that point, support for civil rights, like I think it was like in the 50s, I think 20% of Americans saw it as the biggest issue in America, but then by Lyndon Johnson, it was like more than half because of what they were seeing happening in the South.
So I want to
resolve the
really
images of
quick.
the cops. Yeah.
Okay.
Loner box, really quick. Previously, did you say that in Letter from a Birmingham Jail, Martin Luther King Jr. condemned the riots? The violence?
No, it's in language of the unheard. He condemns violence in a lot of places. So yeah.
Oh, just
in the middle. Just in the middle of Letter from a Birmingham Jail, he says, "In your statement, you assert that our actions, even though peaceful, must be condemned because they precipitate violence." But is this a logical assertion? Isn't this like condemning a robbed man because his possessions of money precipitated the evil act of robbery? Isn't this like condemning Socrates because his unswerving commitment to truth and his philosophical inquiries precipitated the act by the misguided populace in which they made him drink hemlock? Isn't this like condemning Jesus because his unique God consciousness and never ceasing devotion to to God's will precipitated the evil act of crucifixion?
I can say, yeah, I know that you're referring. What actions is he referring to that they're condemning? He's not referring to violence.
Let me read you another quote from the Letter from Birmingham Jail. He says, I started thinking about the fact that I stand in the middle of two opposing forces in the community. One is a force of complacency made up of, I'm not going to use that word, who as a result of long years of repression...
Wick desperate to interrupt Doe, who has barely spoken. Like, we're ready to leap on and, like, jump up over it. Beloved Panda, I think you may have had a message not go through. I'm not sure. Sometimes the thing auto-catches messages and doesn't give me a chance to moderate it. Yeah, can't let it speak. It's too smart. Anyway.
Drained of self-respect and sense of somebodyness. And then the other force is one of bitterness and hatred and comes perilously close to the advocate.
Hey, also, Carol, I feel like you're stirring up shit for no reason. Do you feel like you're stirring up shit for no reason? Because I feel like you're stirring up shit for no reason. Like, multiple times in the chat, it seems like you want attention right now. And I don't know if you realize that that's what you're doing. But as a streamer who's watched this behavior several times, it just seems a little bit weird.
Of violence. It is expressed in the various black nationalist groups that are springing up over the nation, the largest and best known being Elijah Muhammad's Muslim movement. The movement is nourished by the contemporary frustration over the continued existence of racial discrimination. So yes, he does condemn the violence.
This isn't even a debate. Of course, he condemned violence of the protesters. When he's talking about they precipitate violence, he's talking about the strategy, which was to go and get the shit being out of you by cops. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, the disagreement that he has with violence are that violence will not incident.
No, wait. Was I wrong about that or what?
No, you're right.
Okay,
I'm not disagreeing with that.
What were you getting at me for then?
I asked I asked and double checked, but I'm
okay, cool.
This bit here, I'm sorry. This bit here is he. I'm sorry. Never mind. Honestly, I don't care about this.
I can clarify. He's talking about precipitating violence in the sense that, yes, they did want the cops to react to them violently, because when they went to Albany, the sheriff there was very strategic. They were very calm with the protesters, and then basically they left with nothing. So when they went to Birmingham, where Bull Connor was a fucking psycho, they knew that getting the cops to attack them would look very good in the press, it would look very good internationally, and it would bring civil rights to the forefront.
Right.
But so it's the violence of the cops.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
If I can suggest a redirection, and this might actually be more productive conversation as opposed to simply a debate.
Sunday.
Running away from the topic at hand. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, not actually. I'm actually going directly to
Wick. Behave yourself.
The assumption that the opticality to a general public is critical to the success of a social movement sort of presumes that social movement, or the group that constitutes a social movement, for example, if it's a case of an ethnic group asserting its rights against the broader majority, that group has to not be held in contempt in the first place. There is a long history of social movements of oppressed ethnic groups, so on and so forth, that is simply never recorded. This is one of the things I bring up in my opening statement when I talk about there's a bit of a survivorship bias going on here, in which we count the successful movement as representative of all of the quote-unquote violent fringes that may themselves have common cause with the mainstream movement, but are actually have their own discrete goals and values and constitution, et cetera, that are nonetheless sort of disappeared because, well, this movement succeeded. Therefore, they were just lucky enough to succeed along with them, despite the fact that they chose a losing strategy.
Do you not think, even just real quick, even in a, because I take issue with the foundation of your statement here. So let me simply ask, that do you not think that people's perceptions of a group can be changed? So even if a group is despised, do you not think that over time and with effort, that the public perception of that despised group can be changed in a more positive direction?
Well, the public perception of a group whose overt oppression people are comfortable with, say for the example in a group that has been enslaved for a significant amount of time, that group's perception is not going to be changed by that group more quietly accepting their oppression or being more passive towards it. There's going to be some kind of instigating factor that causes
difference
explosion
between
to it.
accepting your oppression and then being violent. Civil resistance is resistance.
Oh,
you
I
are
strongly
resisting
disagree.
your oppression. You are resisting your
an act of
oppression.
resistance.
You're just not doing it through blowing things up or beating.
No.
people.
An act of resistance is itself intrinsically violent. And if you were
Come on, no.
MLK's, well, then weren't all of MLK's disruptive protest sit-ins were these?
Well, I mean,
this
is Wick's thesis. He was very careful to say that a nonviolent protest does not indicate a peaceful protest.
Well, I think Wick would agree with me on this. He's welcome to correct me, but I think Wick would agree with me that these are examples, like MLK's protests. I know that these are easy examples to point to, but these are examples.
They represent a direct existential challenge to the way of life of Americans at the time.
Yeah, but the problem is
not violent.
The problem is that no one defines violence in this way outside of people who are trying to impress their first year sociology teacher. It's like when you look at if you look at any of the academic literature on this, when they say MLK was nonviolent, they're not saying he was like law-abiding, well-behaved. Yeah, he broke the law fucking loads. He deliberately got himself arrested, but they still class him as non-violent, right? When we say violence, I think we mean generally. Most people think destruction of property or physically attacking people. That's what most people mean by violence.
I loathe that the idea that destruction of property is violence, but that causing deaths, but like having a machine that emits like emissions that cause deaths of humans and animals is not violent. Like the Wick straight up said that a car being driven around is non-violent despite the death that it causes. Oh my God, this is so frustrating. But we knew it was going to be. We knew.
Well, that's sort of immaterial because the literature that's going to give you the information about whether or not nonviolent versus violent protest is more effective is not going to be using that late definition. It's going to be referring to whether or not it's going to be referring to whether or not they were armed, whether or not they targeted, for example, property as opposed to persons. And by the way, some of the literature is very interesting. They have definitions that you would find sort of intuitive. For example,
liberalism of loaner box.
That media coverage of broken windows will tend towards an understanding of a movement as nonviolent versus attacks on persons, which they will identify as being more violent. But when you actually look at the coverage of the BLM riots and protests that characterized them as violent, the thing they pointed to primarily, with the exception of some cases like the Rittenhouse case, was broken windows, burning cop cars, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And I think that this highlights the importance of not giving into this kind of framing and de-emphasizing it when it comes up. Like if you are really serious about this, then you don't want to spend your protesting your resources doing all this condemnation. You just want to keep on doing what you were already doing. Another thing I wanted to say to Sunday's point earlier about you not being held in contempt. This is something that receives support in the literature, that the martyrdom strategy that we're talking about of going out and getting yourself beat up, it's not very effective when the audience is not already sympathetic to your cause.
Yes.
Vigilante violence against Black people in the United States has always been super common, but it didn't garner much sympathy from the primarily white audience until after a certain point, when the audience was paying more attention.
No, this is important. Why were they paying more attention? What changed between 1850, right, or let's say 1900 and 1955? What changed? It wasn't new factor was introduced into society that changed the dynamics here? Because there's an answer to this.
It wasn't just
that's 50 years, which includes 2
World Wars. I wasn't even talking about that long of a time period. I was talking about Eisenhower to Lyndon B. Johnson, like that short of a time period.
The main invention in that short of a time period that became much more common and much more widely produced throughout American homes was mass media, the television, things like that. This coincided, right, with the changes in perception, because we didn't just hear about it and things like that, but you saw it. You saw the black kids being hosed down by the cops. You saw that.
You've identified,
right?
but Wick, you've identified a key weakness in nonviolence as a dogmatic strategy, in that you are relying on the media covering your movement favorably.
Yes, and the media will cover you better in general if you are nonviolent. Yes.
It's also just
I can bridge the gap that you two are having. I'm gonna push back on maybe
Sunday is saying you are hinging the entirety of the efficacy of your movement on how it is covered and whether it is covered, in fact, in the media. Like literally Wick's entire premise of the efficacy of protest is that it sways public opinion, and that that is the critical aspect. People still support anti-black vigilantism. Kyle Rittenhouse. Exactly. Yeah.
little bit here, but like there is actually a perfectly good example of when non-violence can be pursued, and if it is completely ignored by the media and the system, then they kind of leave you with no choice. Mandela was a perfect, like him and the ANC pursued non-violence for decades, but after they were outlawed and after there was like numerous massacres against non-violent protesters, and after
he thinks TV is the first mass media. I guess he's saying that like the emotional, like I think he omitted the word like video. Like, I think that he was considering the effect that witnessing in a video format, you know, children being hosed down with fire hoses. Like, I think that that's kind of what he was referring to. Like, and how quickly that can turn around. And it's, you know, it's one thing to see a photo in the newspaper the day after, but it's a totally different thing to see video on the news that night. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of get where he's coming from with that. But, like, that's the entire thing. The entire idea here from Wick is that like the way that the media covers your movement is what makes it efficacious.
Was a perfect, like him and the ANC pursued non-violence for decades, but after they were outlawed and after there was like numerous massacres against non-violent protesters, and after the fucking there were like forced removals of black communities like in the millions because they were making the cities too black, then they decided that violence was inevitable, so they channeled it. They chose to say, okay, we're going to direct this into sabotage. They went for
Sunday is laughing. I don't know what he's laughing at.
Infrastructure because they wanted to make the country ungovernable under that system.
Yeah, look, I'm never saying there's never an indication.
Hold on.
Several people are typing.
Wait.
But
go ahead, Wick.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that there's never a time for violence. Obviously, that's not true. There is, there are extenuating circumstances. There are edge cases. There are times where you are left with literally no choice. But my argument is that
was like,
on the whole, in general, nonviolent civil resistance is more effective and better and leads to better outcomes, because we have to also look at what does success look like when a violent movement, right?
Here's the other question. Do we think that the civil rights movement was successful? Because I would go out on a limb and say no, it wasn't successful. If the goal was to like eliminate the oppression of black people, we've not gotten there. Like, they're still being killed in the street. They're still being incarcerated at ridiculous numbers. They're still being policed incredibly highly. You know, I would say the civil rights movement is ongoing. I mean, but yeah, when people invoke this, they're referring. It's like the Malcolm X and MLK time of the movement. Like, I don't think, you know, you could say that, yeah, the civil rights movement, like, it is still a fight that's happening, but like, we view it as something in the past that accomplished a goal, but it hasn't accomplished that goal. If the goal was to like fix oppression of black individuals. Yeah. But like, so, you know, when people are lauding MLK as being a successful civil rights leader, I would argue, I mean, he was successful at it and he got murdered because he was good at it, right? But like, was he successful? No, he was killed before he could see the success of his movement. Like, that's what occurred, you know? So like, yeah, when these people are like, you know, MLK, this is what successful civil rights movements look like. Like, they weren't successful, though. They failed. Like, they utterly failed, in fact.
Successful, it is less likely to end in democracy. It is less likely to end in non-repressive.
I would like to
be clear.
interject.
This is because
just a moment.
Sunday is just straight up laughing now.
I just want to interject.
This is bias from the moderator.
Yeah.
It is, towards good conversation. So everyone present agrees there are instances where nonviolence as a doctrine is preferable, and times when the opposite is preferable. Obviously, different countries, different situations, different times. Sure. I was curious on a point that got brought up earlier that I felt was under-discussed. You were talking about the degree of permissibility of violence in nonviolent movements. Because when we cite MLK, of course, a principled nonviolent actor, the way he talked about violence, rioting, property destruction, would have been considered by media today, and was then, to be overly permissive and tolerant of the violent elements of the civil rights protest. That is to say, while many in the media look to see uncritical denunciations, he would often qualify, he would categorize, he would explain, oh, well, sure, I think it's bad. However, and for that, he was often blamed for enabling the violence. To what extent do you think a non-violent movement has to condemn inevitable elements of violence that exist alongside them? How much is too far? If MLK had to toe that line in a way that upset people on both sides, I don't think there's an easy answer.
Well, I can give an answer to this actually affirmative on Wick's side. So, for example, if somebody on your side is proposing to do something horrifically violent, like to the point where we would consider this to be unpalatable, say, for example, the kidnapping and torturing of the children of whoever in order to provoke some kind of positive political response, I think under certain conditions there is a moral threshold where you would actually decide, no, like the cost becomes too high, or regardless of whether or not on balance some onlooker might like consider these to be even, you would not partake. And I think that everybody on my side would probably agree with that.
Well, the question is, I thought isn't whether you partake or not. It's when it happens. So when it inevitably happens, because again,
no, you would condemn.
How would you respond? Right?
You would condemn and you would go against, probably in as strong terms as you would say, Wick. Because once again, like the threshold here for why violence is considered, why violence must be left on the table is because there may be a threshold beyond which violence is necessary. Because maybe, for example, media coverage at all is simply impossible. Maybe positive media coverage is impossible. Maybe the media is slanted in such a way as even if you have a nonviolent protest, it simply isn't tractable regardless. Maybe your community is so small, a nonviolent protest.
Yeah, I like Fosh's moderation.
Or maybe there are forces that override democratic ones that are, for example, running over your land with pipelines and bulldozers, so on and so forth. That media coverage, even despite being entirely positive, maybe there's an entire media empire sort of built around condemning that kind of thing. Nonetheless, it's inefficacious in actually stopping it. Maybe under those cases, we actually have to engage in violence to physically stop the progress of that machinery.
And also, to a point that we had earlier about the martyrdom strategy, why is it that police respond violently to peaceful protesters when it happens? I think
the smart ones don't.
Well, the smart ones
don't.
The smart
ones don't because they know it's going to make them look shitty.
But what conditions?
Do you think the cops look good nowadays? Like, do you think
I'm
people
not saying
generally...
Wait, let me finish. What I'm saying is that in order for there to be a disproportionate police response, there needs to be a reputation or thought that these protesters are violent, that they are going to cause mayhem in the streets. This is the kind of thing that will prompt a disproportionate reactionary response from the police. If the police if the police know that the protesters are not going to do anything, then what are they going to do? They're just going to handle them with kid gloves, and then the protesters are going to gain nothing. This martyrdom strategy then relies on the existence of violent flanks, because violent flanks are what make the possibility of they create the possibility of the disproportionate police response that you want.
Are you arguing that
I don't know if that's necessarily
we're not violent enough that the police will actually treat us better? That'd be a terrible world where the police treat protesters well. What a horrific outcome where police are treating protesters with kid gloves. What a horrific
Wick is bad faith. Look at this. Wick is bad faith. Did you see any of that? Wick is bad faith. He's not listening. He's not at all engaging with the idea. Wow. It's really, I mean, I guess it's useful to perceive it so that you can be like, oh, well, at least okay, if I was in this debate, I would be like, oh, okay, Wick is someone that I can be as ruthlessly shitty to as I want because he's bad faith. Like, he's clearly not even here to engage in a discussion.
Your whole point was that the martyrdom strategy is the best way of getting social movements towards their objectives, right? So if you're serious about that, if you are serious about the martyrdom strategy, then you will be relying on the violence of certain fringe flanks in order to change your reputation.
I would like to hear. I heard just a moment after you're done speaking. I'd like to hear from Professor Meat and from Doe as well. They both spoke up and have spoken less. But go ahead.
I'll be concise as possible. Like, martyrdom is one effective strategy. There are many others. When it comes to talk about civil resistance, there are very historically effective ways. There are protests in the streets that we think of mostly, but there's also stayaways. There's slowdowns. There's all sorts of kinds of ways.
Very quickly before
any conflict. He's like, God damn it, I'm trying to let Doe talk.
5 seconds.
The problem, the Wick, is that the protests in the streets that you're referring to, they are either going to be passive when they encounter police, or they are not going to be. If the police, for example, simply do not engage in violence against the protesters, your martyrdom strategy fails because there's no active martyrdom.
Okay.
That's not what that's actually called.
Professor Meat, please go right ahead. You open your mouth.
I'm sorry, guys. I'll be real quick, and then you guys can go all you want. I'm just here to back up my buddy Wick. But no, I appreciate it. The only thing I was going to say is that I was going to point out is that the point of the martyrdom strategy, the reason the martyrdom strategy works, and part of why I don't think it's sort of a mischaracterization to say that martyrdom is like creating victims, not realistically in my mind, because the point of martyrdom ideally is to put on display malpractices, injustices that are happening on a daily basis, right? You're like in the case of ML in the civil rights movement, these are people, at least ideally, theoretically, who are like in a population who is going to be served, doled out injustice to them, who are electing to be the ones who it is done to so that it can be seen, right? And so that specific brand of martyrdom, you're right, isn't always possible. You can't always rely on the cops beating you up, but that's not the only way to put on display the negative circumstances that you're trying to protest against.
And likewise,
I've seen some other ways. Sorry, I've seen some other ways. Like some people do die-ins. If you've ever seen a die-in before, where they pretend to die on the floor. Most of the time, I've seen people talk about those. They laugh about them because they say like, "Oh, you guys are pretending like you have something that's so bad that's happening to you, but really you're fine because look, you're still alive. Things are still okay." Like that's.
Yeah,
that's part of
like, this poses a problem for.
I just want to defend my. No, I want to defend my. I guess it's Just Stop Oil, right? Because again, like, yeah, the cops are pretty well behaved with them most of the time, but they get a lot of attention even if they just do a die-in. And what usually happens is it's not so much about making the protesters look good. It's because
there was a die-in in the UK, a huge protest, an entire day, like, and maybe even an entire weekend, a trans rights protest in front of the NHS offices, and it got zero media coverage. Like, I literally did not even know about it until Abigail Thorne mentioned it in her Philosophy Tube video about the NHS's failings of this is what the fucking whole conversation was a minute ago about, like, nonviolence. You know, there's a good chance that you just won't even be covered. Like, you won't have any attention brought to the issue whatsoever. Anyway.
Because again, civil rights protesters were not favored by the American public, but the legislation was favored. Same with Just Stop Oil, because usually you'll get the default response from the average person to Just Stop Oil is, "Oh, I hate those hippies, but also climate change is actually a big deal." Shit.
Yeah, the thing is that Just Stop Oil supplements the sillier things that it does with like really extreme things. Like I think recently, a couple protesters went to jail for multiple years or got sentenced to go to jail for multiple years because they got up on top of a bridge and stopped traffic across it for hours.
They were acquitted of that, I believe.
Sorry, they were acquitted.
It's the case I'm thinking of. There was recently a case where they.
What is JSO? I don't know if I know what that is, or I'm just not familiar with the acronym. Yeah, it's also Just Stop Oil. Oh, okay, I hear you. Okay, so yeah. So he's got to defend Just Stop Oil. There's also, but you're right, Corpse Candy. There is a presupposition that the media is free and censored and, that is not censored and controlled by fascists. Yeah. I wish Doe got to talk more. Yeah, I wish that Doe would interrupt more. And I also kind of wish that it would call out, like, you all are talking over me a whole bunch, and I am the only visibly femme person on this panel, so maybe, like, fucking stop being assholes. I don't know.
Were up and on trial to go to jail for possible years for obstructing traffic, but they were acquitted.
It might be a different one.
It might be.
It's kind of immaterial. Good for them, but nonetheless, yeah.
The point is that they do both, right? They do more extreme things than just the violence, right?
Blocking traffic is
that would typically be
blocking traffic. Hang on, man. We'll slow down. Blocking traffic is very easily and often is construed as violence. Blocking traffic prevents people from getting food, from getting to the hospital. People die when traffic is blocked. Yeah, that's not a laughing matter.
So if I block, hold on. Here's the
Wick
thing.
is like acting like this is the stupidest thing he's ever heard, as though we haven't been consistently referring to property violence as violence, and like, yes, preventing someone from getting somewhere. Like, yeah, a person could have a heart attack in their car on a stopped highway. Like, people die in traffic jams, so of course people could die if a protest blocks the road. Like, the blocking the economy is generally interpreted as being violent, like in the sense that, like, yeah, like you're blocking trucks from getting to where they need to go, trucks carrying products, and you're preventing people from going to the store to buy the thing. So there is definitely an like a perception, and they treat this as though it's violent. And then when someone gets out of their car and starts beating up on the protesters who are blocking the road, which I have seen video of quite recently with Just Stop Oil specifically, like, because they always wear orange, right? Like, some guy got out of his truck and was like beating up on one of these people, and then like they started to drive through like they were gonna just run these people over, you know? So like, people certainly respond to the street being blocked as though it's violence, and that violent retaliation is justified. And Wick is acting like this is ridiculous, like he's a fucking moron who's never been out of the house before.
I would say that, for example, anti-abortion protesters trying to block access to abortion clinics for when people are trying to get in. I would say
Also
that that's
true.
violent protest because you are trying to obstruct somebody, specifically the person trying to get an abortion, from getting something that is like that they medically want, right?
Yeah.
Do you not think of that as violent in any way?
The problem is if you define violence that broadly, then everything becomes violence. Like consuming almond milk is violence. Have you seen those supply chains? They're pretty fucking uneven and like coercive. So yeah, but the problem
I was like, yeah.
Why dismiss that? Why dismiss that?
At least, sorry?
I said, why dismiss that?
Because the good thing about language is that like we all basically
No,
mean
the good thing about language learner box. No, the good thing about language learner box
like,
is that we can take. Hang on.
Wait, hold on. Several people are typing.
Because the good thing about language is that like we all basically
No, the good thing about language learner box. No, the good thing about language learner box is that we can take. Hang on. The good thing about language learner box is that we can take an expanded category and then we can particularize it. So we can say yes, in fact, violence takes place with a myriad of different types of activities that aren't equivalent to the physical breaking of another human being's skin, and then we can particularize corporeal violence, physical violence against bodies, violence against property, etc., etc.
No, this is it's making it harder to communicate. When I have
What
to
about this wasn't
explain,
clear?
when I want it to be very clear, when I go to someone
right?
and I say,
But
hey,
when you
I
explain,
had violence
but when you have
against
to-
me, I need them to understand what I
you-
mean. I don't need
but
them
when
to
you
ask
yes, but when
questions. Well, did
but when
someone
you
block your
say
traffic? Did they cut you off?
but when you say a protest is violent, and somebody asks how so, you will have to explain in what manner they were violent, and what you will say is
Only
did they
because
murder a
the
person?
that
Hang on,
is
did
only
they
a
murder?
problem.
Hang on, did they murder a person? No, they broke a window. Well, hang on, I thought violence was just harm against persons. Yeah, well, the property is an extension of the person, it's their livelihood, etc., etc. You're playing the exact same game.
That's
No,
not true
but
at all.
like, sorry, like when you look at the majority of the literature, like violence is either destruction of property or attacking
I'm
people.
so
That's it.
glad Sunday and Doe are on a panel against Loner Box. Have you been hoping to see like an interaction with those particular individuals? I don't watch Sunday very much. I watched him, I watch him occasionally when he's on with someone else. And I don't watch Loner Box at all because I tried to watch him one time and I thought that he was pathetic and annoying in the debate with Polly. But so was Polly, so I want to be clear about that. They were both pathetic and annoying. And yeah, I do, like, if Doe did this shit more often, I would consume a lot of Doe content. Why is Nuvenal... Oh, hold on, I'll fix it.
Like, you can broaden
But
that.
that
You want,
involves
there
that
are,
exact
there are
same level of
situations.
abstraction on the box.
But then the
That's
problem is,
not
like, the
what,
problem is, we've just been having a whole discussion about whether MLK was non-violent, and that people generally
But you're
agree
making
that his
the
whole
same
philosophy is
conceptual
non-violence.
move.
Oh, but is boycotting bus services not violent because they bankrupted businesses? Yeah,
first-
you could say that, but then we can't communicate. Then we're just grunting at each other.
As Sunday
That's
said
not
at
true.
the
I don't
beginning,
think that's true at all.
I also
No,
have no
it's
problem with.
completely
I also
true.
have no problem with biting that bullet. I have no problem with characterizing that as violent. That costs me nothing.
It
serves my
does, though.
side
You.
fine.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yes,
Wait,
it is a problem.
if I could interject briefly.
Please.
The moment you step away from anything done against another human body as violence and towards property damage also constitutes violence, you open up a gradient. Blocking traffic can impede people from accessing vital services. Striking as a worker can disrupt supply lines that people rely on to live. I don't know if there's an objective answer to where exactly, like the word violence, capital V violence. But to avoid the semantic discussion, I think unless you disagree, I think we can acknowledge the ambiguity of the gradient, and we can just specify what kind of violence we're referring to. Better that than back and forthing over whether or not this or that the other.
Sure.
My definition, and we can agree on this or not. You can, if we want to argue about this, we can. But my definition: physical to other people, breaking of skin violence, or direct property damage, like direct, not indirect.
Okay, but that
I think
or
that's
property
fucking-
damage though introduces
I'm sorry, I about dropped the slur.
exactly the same gradient that me.
No, it doesn't. We don't have
yes,
to
it does.
follow
Hang
the
on.
string all the way down. We
Calm
can just
down,
say
Liz.
we're stopping
Calm
here.
down,
We're doing
Liz.
it again.
Me, Doe, and Sirius are perfectly fine with accepting that there is a gradient of violence that includes these other things, and that violence can have different levels of severity depending on your perspective and depending on your values, etc., etc. There's no contradiction there whatsoever. However, when you're introducing an abstraction that is personal property that is perhaps very distant from the person, maybe some personal property of the wealthy, for example, may be so infinitesimal, even though so large compared to the average person, that its destruction doesn't even register to them until long after the event. They simply don't care. And yet, nonetheless, it can be used adequately to characterize a protest as violent or non-violent, depending on like whether or not there's a picture of a smashed window that can be put on the news. Right? Like a bank losing its window does not hurt the bank in any meaningful capacity. And yet, nonetheless, that can be used to characterize a protest movement carried out by a people who are actively being choked out from having access to essential services.
That's because people are going to categorize that violence in the same way that Wick is categorizing it.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to see the broken window and they're going to say that's direct violence.
Okay, so then isn't the problem then that we're just ceding the framing to the other side?
I'm just like, God bless you, Vosh, for bringing us back to like fucking defining what violence means. Like, oh my God, that is the question here. Yeah, what's up, Rebecca? Welcome in.
Like that seems to be a huge part of the problem here, is that we're just ceding that it's violence.
Well, you can say that framing. Well, you can. The word doesn't matter. The point is that that's what people care about. That thing.
Well, no,
we can call it something. We can call it something other than violence. We call it flubgub for all I care. The point is that there's this thing that Wick was called.
That's not true. Hold on, that's not true. Professor Me, it's just not true that the word doesn't matter. Because
the problem is that you guys are trying to go against a fucking like ages-long tradition of when we talk about the difference between non-violence and violence and protest, we typically mean violence being destruction of property and attacking people, and non-violence being like civil disobedience.
These people are willing. Okay, here's the problem with this. These people are willing to abstract out the definition of violence. Like, okay, like a clear definition of violence is like hitting someone else or like breaking someone else's skin or bruising them, right? Like that's clear violence directly against someone else. They are willing to accept that something like attacking property could be considered indirect violence, but they think it's fucking ridiculous and insane and, oh my God, I can't believe you would say that. The idea that violence toward human bodies can be abstracted and indirect. Like, this is maddening. I would fucking I want to be on it. I need to do debates. I need to do debates. Like, I need to have these conversations because I need to work out this aggression. The next time there's a debate like this, someone needs to tell me beforehand so that I can be like, excuse me, can I get on there, please? I would like to participate, please. Oh man. Oh, this is frustrating.
I mean, you guys are coming and trying to change the definitions.
By ages long, you don't actually mean that long. We haven't particularized that long. We're
also moving away from it in the literature. Like in the literature, they're moving away from violence versus non-violence precisely because it's so subjective and fuzzy.
It's a mistake. If you're doing it, and that's a mistake.
No, but hang on. No, just an obvious counter to what Lonerbox is saying that demonstrates it's not true is that in political science and Weber.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean this debate specifically. Yeah, I know they're all friends, and I'm sure that they are. Yeah, no, that's fine. But like generally speaking, I guess like panel debates don't happen that often anymore. Although Brother Malcolm did ask me about one yesterday, but Brother Malcolm was saying that he was looking for some people to argue about whether trans women have periods, but he said that he already had several people on who were supporting the idea, so I think he was like looking for people who are against the idea. So I don't know. I'm not really like a huge fan of Brother Malcolm anymore. I don't even think I follow him on Twitter anymore. But yeah, I would be willing to participate in that kind of conversation, but I think that they don't need another person to be for. There was a discourse a while ago about it on Twitter, and he's finally getting around to organizing he kind of fell off +L+ ratio. Yeah, he was just kind of personally a dick to me a couple times, and that's why I don't like him, basically. Like, he was just personally a dick to me during the debate that we had where I was fucking 5v1 and I was the only person. Like, he was a dick to me during that. He's been a dick to me during conversations on Twitter. We had one conversation between the two of us that was pretty cool, but like, he's just casually like willing to be a dick to people who are ostensibly in the same movement as him, and I just don't vibe with it. We don't need a panel discussing whether trans women have periods with an anti-faction. That's the kind of conversation that should just be like, yeah, scientists and trans women. I see what you mean, y'all. Yeah, anyway. So I could, I guess, be on a debate panel. It's just I don't know if, yeah, maybe I'll go ahead and respond to that tweet or I'll respond to that DM while we're here.
The state's legitimacy as being by dint of its legitimate monopoly on physical
when
violence.
I specifically
however,
say that,
however, at no point is it required that the state be actively engaging in violent corporeal action against human bodies at any single moment for it to have that legitimacy. We understand violence as, for example, existing in potentia.
People don't.
We do not talk about violence as involving simply the destruction of human bodies and or property.
This is a problem, if I may, just real quick, without interruption.
No. If you're going to make a claim, if you're going to make an appeal to the traditional use of the term, you have to actually appeal to
can I respond to what Sunday said? I was like, when I say in the literature, I mean specifically in discussions about political violence versus non-violence. Obviously, if you're reading fucking Foucault,
that's literally what I'm referring to. Like the father of sociology saying this.
No, I mean like contemporary literature when it discusses violence and non-violence. That's a bit different.
Contemporary literature is what we are referring to. Contemporary literature is what we are referring to when we say that it does not refer specifically to corporeal violence against skin and buildings.
So when people are when all these papers talk about like MLK and non-violence, even though he did things that literally got fucking colloquially
in newspapers. Peaceful
and in the literature on violence and non-violence.
Again,
the literature is far
You're actually just incorrect. I'm sorry.
So here's the thing.
If you're reading fucking Foucault, everything's violent.
No, we're actually reading the same sources as Wick.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the issue. When you want to communicate to someone, like what's going on, and you tell the average
What's
Joe...
Foucault's position on violence, Thunderbox?
Is average Joe...
How does Foucault define violence?
Foucault is one person. I'm trying to
Foucault.
talk to everyone. I'm trying to talk to as many people as possible. And the vast majority of people out there, and I will die on this hill, if you say, hey, my movement is violent, they think of two things. They think of breaking windows, and they think of, well, breaking windows, burning college property.
Clearly not. Half the debate panel does not agree with that.
I'm going to tell you,
I'm an average Joe. I'm not in an ivory tower somewhere.
To Wick's point and to what you said earlier, Sierra, it's like the reason I say the word doesn't matter is because if all of a sudden you called breaking people's windows something other than violent and you put it on the news, the fact that it was not being called violence is not what is determining whether or not people like it.
That's completely untrue. That's the thing. Like, we have done experiments on this where the exact same events are framed as either violent or non-violent, and people's perception of the legitimacy of the protesters changes.
I am sure that if you frame something as violent versus non-violent, framing it as violent.
Okay, so he's like, okay, he's not understanding that it's not like just choosing to call something violent with extra steps. Like, he's not getting that the idea about not calling something violent is about reframing it. That we're like, oh my God, we're like focused in on this. Oh my God, it's so dumb. What's up, Ramya? Welcome in. I don't get why liberals are so obsessed with Windows. Yeah, I don't get it either. I just don't understand. Wick loves to draw huge assertions about large portions of the population's thoughts with no evidence. Dude probably goons to TED Talks. Yeah, he's making an argument ad populum. Basically, that's like the entirety of Wick's thing, is argument ad populum.
Is going to...
But that's what you're appealing to when you're saying that the optics are what matters.
Without Windows, how could liberals live in glass houses? True.
The quality that Wick is referring to. What I'm trying to say is
the words that you use influence people.
Even in those scenarios, the bulk of the things that people are going to decide on whether or not they approve of it or disapprove of it is going to be the invocation of the underlying qualia, right? People care about violence acts. We can call it. Yeah,
the underlying qualia. What are you talking about?
The characteristics of the definition.
That's not what qualia means. I have no idea what you're saying.
Sure. Do you really have no idea what I'm saying when I say the characteristics of the definition?
Yes, I have no idea what you're saying.
Someone in the face and
the sentence characteristics of the definition.
Okay, wait. Hold on. Because we ended up doing it anyway. I think the problem here is that the selective framing of certain actions as violent or not, and the subjectivity of that determination has literally been a tool of social control for as long as we've had mass media.
True.
So appealing to, or even attempting to work out where exactly something falls in this line that is deliberately kept arbitrary to reaffirm the values of whoever gets to determine whether or not it is, seems really counterproductive. We're obviously talking about a distinction between violence and social violence. There are plenty of theorists who speak on these issues, who would happily side on either side of this issue, and we can also agree, I think, that whether or not something optically plays well and whether or not it's academically sound are two entirely separate questions. I'd be far more interested if we specifically referred to what kinds of violence or not we're talking about when we talk about what is justified, whether we're talking about breaking windows directly, strike action, deploying supply lines, whatever we mean. Because I think we could do this particular bit forever. You know,
violent protest can involve, for example, destruction of government property, attempting to bulldoze a traditional.
I just want the specific acts being referred to over what could otherwise be an interminable discussion.
When I think about
it's going to depend. It's just all going to depend on the context of the specific social movement. Like, there is no one size fits all for every social movement.
For this discussion,
our first dono of the day.
No, why would we? Because it changes based on time too.
Because what's going to happen is you're going to change it based on what it fits your argument. That's what's going to happen.
No, that's not what.
We're going to chase this dog all the way down.
Here's the thing. Even the
scholars. Hang on. I've got an interesting.
Moderator,
I've got an interesting question for the panel. I am curious about people's take on this. So I think we would generally agree that that there's a rising tide of transphobia.
Almost 100 likes.
As well as generally anti-feminist sentiment, etc., etc. Can anyone tell me in which province there was a stabbing of a feminist professor in the last month?
Oh, I know. It was in BC. Wasn't it? No, it was in Waterloo. Is Waterloo in Ontario?
No.
I read the article, but I don't remember the province.
In Canada?
Same here.
I think I heard about that.
And how much did that?
Canada,
how much wind did that take out of the sails of conservative reactants against trans issues? None.
What's your point?
That is my point.
So again, isolated incidents.
If the targeted community, unless the targeted community is not held in contempt, it lacks the capacity to change minds by passively accepting its oppression.
you gotta have better evidence.
Well, that is kind of true. Like even like at the time it happened.
Wick just said you have to have better evidence than a single instance, as though he's provided literally any evidence this entire time, except just invoking argument ad populum. Oh my god, this dude sucks.
And Till didn't get that much attention at all. But 10 years later, everyone's thinking that. But
I could say if we're talking about feminist professors, I mean, I think.
But if we're also talking about like how much did January 6th damage the Republican Party? They've been fighting each other ever since on that. So.
Well, although to be clear,
depends, you know?
as far as violent protests are concerned, very few deaths, very little property damage.
Yeah, but it was still everyone here. I hope would consider that violent.
Wait, why? Why would
hang on. Wait. What if
property was violent?
No, but slow down. What if
and someone died? That's why.
Yeah, absolutely. But what if that didn't happen? What if they just walked in, maybe someone shat on a desk? What then? Would that not be violent still? I would consider that violent.
Breaking into a building is probably violence, yeah.
Well, no, I disagree with you, Letterbox. I think if they were peaceful and
like the vandalism,
and not vandalized and not hurt anyone, it would have. No, if I'm telling you right now, if they had come in, they had not vandalized anything, they had not hurt anyone, and they were simply peaceful, that would be looked on much differently. Are you kidding me? That would be looked on much differently by the public than it is now. Yeah,
I don't know. It's silly, but it would be way more favorable than what they did.
Yeah, are you arguing against that? Do you disagree?
I mean, I didn't know about the cops being killed until long after. I knew about the person who was climbing the walls.
That's because you weren't paying attention. That was like day of stuff.
I was watching it live day of. There was no coverage of that.
Well, sure, but that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't change the fact that Wick's example, like the example of someone going in and taking a shit, would be viewed would have way less of a disruptive effect on the Republican Party.
Yeah, I don't understand this point that you're trying to make. Obviously, if January 6th was less violent, it would have been viewed more favorably.
No, you're missing the point. There's survivorship bias here in terms of what you consider to be a successful protest. You are identifying the ones that people cared about, and therefore, they're accepting their oppression and being covered by the media in such a manner as their oppression actually became existent to the people observing it who weren't part of that protest. That depends on so many different things that most people in the world do not have.
Also,
I would agree to that most movements don't succeed. Yeah, I'll agree to that.
Okay, but if most movements don't succeed,
regardless of violence or not,
if most movements don't succeed, and what percentage do you suppose those movements are violent? Like, we have a handful of cases to draw.
We have data on this, and you dispute the data if you'd like, but we have data from Erica Chenoweth, and you've been sent.
Your author disputes the data.
The non-violance.
Yes, your author disputes the data. Your author disputes the data you are citing.
Wick, I want to point your attention to Erica Chenoweth, like her own characterization of her data. Like, she has put out tables showing the difference over time between the success rates of violent versus non-violent protests. And if we see, it changed over time. Not after World War II even. So the 1940s.
After World War II, it steadily non-violence became more and more and more effective.
Yeah, but for those first few decades after World War II, or rather these first couple decades, violent was more effective. So it's not to say that nonviolent is never effective. It's that it depends on the time and place and the conditions that you're in. Moreover, I want to point you to something else, which is that Erica's data has been analyzed by other people, which, that's good because her data set is huge and extensive, and I applaud her for that. But one thing is that when it was broken down by race, like the racial makeup of the protests, there was no strategic advantage to nonviolence when it was a movement by a minority or disadvantaged population. Violent protests and nonviolent protests had the same success rate for minority groups.
So even in the worst case scenario where a group is despised, violence has no appreciable benefit towards nonviolence, is what you're saying to me right now.
Yep.
Except in the most famous cases, it actually does and is.
In the most famous cases, what does that even mean?
Well, Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha movement in particular, the decision, the success of that movement was also predicated on its contrary, which was the attack on British officers by the Indian National Army. Yeah. What you're probably putting your finger on is that in a situation, what you're probably putting your finger on, Wick, and I think we would agree on this, in a situation in which you have the capacity for positive media coverage, in which you are at some level of closeness with the powers that be. You are part of, for example, you are immediate subjects of the city in which those authorities reside, and so on and so forth. Nonviolent action has a greater effect when you have that type of relationship with the given authorities. But when we're talking about, there are a myriad of other cases in which that isn't the case, in which nonviolent action
You're
simply
close.
means.
Let me answer this real quick, because
Right,
you're
close to
close, right? Because one of the goals of a civil resistance movement is to ingratiate themselves with the populace, to ingratiate themselves with the pillars of power, which support any kind of structure which they're trying to change.
Oh, that's not true.
That's
That-
not,
that's
not
not
true.
true.
That's not true at all. That's very
What are you
incorrect.
talking about? That's just
What are they
the pillars-
protesting against?
They may not want to ingratiate themselves. For
They
example,
want to make the
The
people
Ben Shapiro
the pillars
voice
of
gets
power
me
that
every
support
time.
a regime, an institution, a country, a society. All of them are run by people.
did
And
we
so,
want to
again, we
ingratiate
know-
ourselves to
Yeah,
the
but
British when we were
slaveholders are
separated
people
from them?
too, Wick.
But what are you talking about? We went to war with slave. They ingratiated themselves with the North, and we went to war and we
Yeah, that's
killed
not
them.
protest. That's war. That's
Yeah, we killed them. We killed the slave owners.
It's political violence. Oh my God! These people think political violence only applies to the context of protests. Is this the limitations of this debate? Like these people, that's the fucking problem. That's why they don't get the point. That's why they don't get what Doe has been trying to say. Like that's why they don't understand this as a systemic thing, because they literally. Oh my God! All right. Yep.
Or we tried to.
But you still had whites-only institutions and
Sure,
places.
it took a while because 400, at the time.
But who are they? Who are they
Hundreds of
ingratiating
years of
themselves towards?
protest.
I don't follow you here exactly.
So it's important.
No, but at some
Let
point,
me
at some
explain it.
point,
If you
the
let
motive
me
was not
explain it, maybe you
ingratiation.
would understand. But you gotta let me finish. So what happens is, what you want to do is let's take the 1978 Iran
is a cunt.
revolution, which was nonviolent. It's not often seen as.
Oh,
nonviolent, but it
that's
was absolutely
incorrect, my
nonviolent.
friend. That is very incorrect, my friend.
Okay, how many did they kill? The Iranian protesters.
The Iranian.
How many did they
protesters.
kill? Yeah, how many did they kill?
I don't know.
I thought we also said
None. They
destruction
didn't
of
kill
property.
anyone.
Pat.
They didn't kill anyone because it was nonviolent. You absolute moron. Okay, so let me educate you here.
I thought we said
the reason that
that-
worked.
I thought we said that property
I gotta answer. I gotta
also
talk about
counted as
the reason
violence.
this works. This reason this works, right, is because the oil
Wick is a
producers,
cunt.
the oil workers, they
Are you talking about
did what was
Mossadegh?
called a slowdown.
Hang on,
Okay.
sorry.
No, most of
refresh
that's
me.
50s.
Yeah, that's
You're talking
different,
about the
different
revolution
thing.
in the 70s.
Different thing.
So okay, he did say the revolution. Sorry, I wanted to make sure. I wouldn't
70.
know if he said revolution or
78.
after that. Because
78.
Mossadegh, I would kind of
79?
get where he's coming from, but there were other problems with that. If he's talking about the Iranian Revolution of 1979, no, they fucking wasn't bloodless. Are you insane?
What are you talking about? So again, the reason that it worked, well, it wasn't bloodless because the authorities at the time killed the protesters, and they would have a funeral and protest. So yeah,
Between
the state was
1963 and
violent
1979, he estimated 3,164 in the anti-Shah movement were killed. The Foundation of Martyrs identified 744 dead in Tehran, where the majority of the casualties supposed to have occurred. The coroner's office counted 895 dead, and Tehran's main
Okay,
cemetery.
3,000
They were
in
going
how many
against
years?
like a
How many
Gestapo-type
years?
secret police. This was not.
No,
this
when
was
we
not
talk
a
about
bloodless
when we talk about non-violent, I think he means the actions of the protesters,
the
not against the
protesters. I don't
state
care
they're
about the
protesting
state.
against,
The
right?
state is going to. So even
Yeah,
so
they didn't
this-
have a dogmatic attitude towards violence.
Oh my
So
God.
they're trying to have a limited like. This is ostensibly supposed to be about political violence generally, but these three people only want to focus in on like what the appropriate actions for a protester to take are. They are literally uninterested in having the conversation about political violence from the state, which is why they're incapable of understanding defensive violence against the state. They're incapable of processing the idea that like a protest might need to be violent because they refuse to even factor in state violence into their calculation, into their equation here. Like they just fucking refuse to acknowledge that aspect of political violence, and they're just never gonna give up this point. This debate would work better with a structured set of prepared questions. Yeah, I mean, yeah. State violence is so removed from the way they are talking about protests, it's actually amusing. Yeah. What's annoying about what Wick just read is that you can also read it as violent protest doesn't have an advantage, but that also means whining about minorities using violence is pointless because violence isn't a detriment to the efficacy either. Thank you, Dizzy. Oh my God.
I kept it off the table. I didn't-
Who's
They did though. Okay.
whose
so the reason it
definition
worked-
are you using of nonviolence? Are you still using Erica's? Because
Just be specific. Be careful here.
Well, because in Erica Chenoweth's book, like you can read her footnotes, and specifically she says that the violence versus nonviolence distinction.
I think aristocracy is trans, but otherwise I think that you might be more or less correct, Corpse Candy. Like, if there's privilege coming into play here, because Doe is the only minority here who has ever had serious political violence threatened upon them. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
For that book is about whether or not there was an armed subset, or whether or not they were predominantly armed.
Oh, sorry. I got the name fucked up. It's not aristocracy, it's Sirius. Sirius's voice reads to me like they're a trans masculine person. Like, I think that's where the Ben Shapiro voice is coming from. Yeah, sorry, that was my bad. But I think that there might be two trans people on here, and they're both on the side of supporting political violence. I think Sirius assists, but I'm not sure. Oh yeah, well I'm not sure. I'm literally basing this off of their voice and nothing else. But yeah, so there is a possibility that Doe is the only person on this panel. I mean, obviously Vosh is like queer, but he's also occupying a relatively safe and privileged position. But yeah, Doe might be the only person here. But like Sunday and Sirius, even if they are both cis, are, you know, on the right side of this issue.
So that doesn't line up with the colloquial definition that we're using, right?
Well, I'm just for whatever it's worth,
I'm with my point.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, I'm going through like.
What it has to do with the point is that
this is directly relevant to what. Just a quick clarification to make. Like, it could be the case that there was some violence from the revolutionaries going on at some level, but this is a little bit like. I'm going through like it's paper after paper after page after page of people like overwhelmingly unanimously by historians. It seems to be the case that the Iranian Revolution that we're referencing was considered overwhelmingly peaceful. I mean, articles about how one of the primary tactics that the people used was to go out and confront the soldiers and like literally speak to them and try to get them to come to their side. And it was at one point it was like over 1,000 people per day were defecting from the military police. It's like
they were ingratiating themselves into the pillars of power, and it was fucking successful. And this rewriting of history that we're trying to do, right, is just wild to me. When we have this documented, it's recorded, we can go and we can look at it. What broke the people is when the police who were the security forces were pulling people out of their homes to go work in the oil factory or the oil refinery or whatever it was called. They stopped doing that. They refused to obey. That is the purpose of getting people of ingratiating yourselves into these pillars of power, is so that the pillars of power who would otherwise support the regime or the country or the institution stop doing so, not necessarily by defecting, though that would be great, but by simply not obeying, not complying, being non-compliant. That is the purpose. That's what works. That's what happens.
Yeah, so speaking again about the 2020 riots, you know, and by, you know, we know that they were police riots. Like, the police were doing the violence. So, yeah, this conversation is fucking brain dead.
I don't understand why you were fighting me on this.
Well, because it's not the strategy of every single protest movement. I think
of course it's not the strategy of. I'm saying when they do use this as a strategy, it is more likely to be successful when they don't.
So, but okay, that's not always true though, because what if you're
not always true, but it generally is true.
Are you going to let me speak? Is that these things are conditional on specific circumstances, and I think one instructive case is the South Sudanese like separatist or independence movement. Because when you look at that kind of thing,
the seizure of the American embassy by Islamic militants in November 1979, the consequent hostage crisis, and above all, the Iranian-Iraq war began in September 1980, strengthened the Islamic Republic because of the rally around flags and This was not a non-violent protest, Wick. You were incorrect on this.
We're talking about primarily. It's about being predominantly like
Sunday. You interrupt.
You're sort of. I think Sunday is sort of doing the same thing that people do about MLK, about BLM. That's what they say. Right? Yeah, sorry, BLM. Where they say, oh well, they point to violent things that did happen and they try to characterize the protest.
Well, that's because the violent things were done by the movement.
No, I love it that we fought so hard against the right wingers being like, oh, mostly peaceful. Look at all these riots, and we're like, no, it's mostly peaceful. But now when it comes to the other side, it's like, oh, actually, like this mostly peaceful movement was really violent.
I wouldn't say
you're doing it right when you're saying about BLM.
Hang on, I wouldn't say.
That's the thing. We don't want to concede that. You guys want to concede the. Oh, sorry.
I wouldn't characterize BLM as non-violent. I would characterize BLM as being besmirched in the sense of being characterized as sort of barbaric and sort of wantonly violent against persons in the street. But I wouldn't characterize them as non-violent. They are intrinsically.
Would you characterize it as predominantly violent?
What did I just say, Professor Meat?
I'm asking to clarify.
I was literally just saying it's intrinsically violent.
Oh, let
okay.
go.
Well, the reason I asked the clarifying question is because I don't think any reasonable person believes that, except maybe some far-right Republicans.
Rob Door's in my chat cheering you on. Rob Door's like, yes, Queen, yes.
No, because violence
was inherently violent.
No,
he's in here cheering you on right now.
I feel really gross about Wick saying yes, Queen, for any reason. It's like, are you a faggot or a black person? If not, shut the fuck up. Like, and arguably, even queer people shouldn't say yes, Queen, like, because that's appropriative. Maybe keep your fucking mouth to yourself, you weirdo. Who the fuck called soldiers pillars of power? I think that he's referring to, like, the military being a pillar of power, like, you know, like, military coup is a thing. Like, you can overturn a government if you have the military on your side. Yeah. Converting soldiers isn't ingratiating yourself to pillars of power. Yeah, I mean, if the soldiers are defecting, then you are in fact not ingratiating yourself to the pillar of power. You are creating more people who are opposed to the pillar of power.
Hang on, wait, Wick. Right. Wick, no, hang on one sec, Wash, I'm so sorry. Wick, you yourself would characterize violence against property as being violence, destruction of property is violence, yes?
Even under
would you deny that BLM riots involve violence against property?
even under that prior characterization, I would consider
No, the
BLM
destruction of property is inherently violent. We are in agreement on this.
And
Everyone
in
here is in agreement on
protests,
this.
They didn't destroy, they didn't blow shit up, they didn't burn things.
BLM, what are you talking about? That was the entire. That was the basis of
occur.
Rittenhouse. That was the basis of Rittenhouse even being in Kenosha. He was defending property because property was being destroyed. What are you smoking?
No one's saying
Again, just because it happened in one-off.
Wick is just being selective. He's like, I get to call things violent or not violent, and like even when they're mutually exclusive. This is like how in Harry Potter, like when you watched Sean's video about Harry Potter, he points out like in the books that like, you know, there are no such thing as good and bad things. There are only good and bad people. So like fat phobia is okay when it's directed against someone who's bad, but it's not okay when it's directed against someone who's good. Like, so he's just trying to say like violence is when I don't like what people are doing, and non-violence is when I like what people are doing. He's trying to say like, is it weird that listening to Vosh makes me feel exhausted? I mean, he's not even talking that much. Why are you bitching about Vosh? He's literally just fucking sitting there. Holy shit. The Vosh fucking VDS goes fucking deep here.
By the way, we all agree on this. BLM protests were mostly peaceful. Some of them were riots, right? We all agree.
Absolutely.
But you can say that about literally every.
Yeah, you can say that about literally
and they
anything.
dropped the popularity when the riots dominated the media, right?
Okay, but when they dominated the media, right? Not when like they were at their most prominent, but when the media started to focus on them and like characterize them as violent. No,
I mean it does. Like when a riot happens, people are going to cover it. Of course, even if you're like even CNN. Remember CNN got like they looked so stupid with this report saying mostly peaceful protest with a burning building behind them. Like media is going to do that. It's a riot. Of course, people want to see a riot on TV. Like,
yeah. So and then what happens when like the media invites you on to talk about like your movement, right? In the wake of a riot, do you go up there and you're like, oh well, these people, you know, these are the bad ones. Like I hate them. Like we need to make a concerted effort to not have so many violent protests. Like
as the moderator referenced
I have to go change my thermostat. I'll be right back.
A very good playbook for this. He condemned the riots, but also condemned the underlying conditions which caused the riots. He used this as an opportunity not to distance himself from the violence, but also to reiterate into his audience the conditions which he was protesting.
How much ink did he give to one versus the other?
Sorry, it is so hot in my office right now.
He spent quite a lot of time.
Proportionally.
He spent so many man hours. Like this was like one of the most fundamental parts of like I don't want maybe training is the wrong word, but the type of discipline he.
Okay, no. I'm not talking about training. I'm talking about when he was like making speeches to people.
Yeah,
sure.
Like, you can see that speech that he gave. You can see like because the philosophy of nonviolence was like essential to him, and it's like you can even see the speech where he said like if every black man in America or every black person in America came out in favor of violence, I would stand against them and say this is wrong. Yeah, he was pretty passionate in that direction. But again, I don't think I disagree with you. He said, yeah, we condemn the violence. That's not what we're about. Back to civil rights issues. Is that?
They really just
wait.
Vosh keeps trying to bring it back and say like, let's go ahead. Oh yeah, no worries. It's tiring. It's late at night. It's 9:30 for me right now. Like they keep Vosh keeps trying to redirect. Can we talk about the specific actions? But we're like, we just keep using the word violence over and over and over again, and everybody's using it in a different way.
Hey, serious, do you disagree with any of that as a strategy?
With what as a strategy? With saying
you seem to be, you've done it like 3 times now. It's like you seem to be very like you don't seem very sure about how to respond. Like if you're on TV asked to condemn the riots or whatever. But it seems like it's pretty simple to just be we condemn the riots.
I condemn the riots, and then well yeah. But that's the thing is that I don't think that. I don't mind doing something like
Vosh in the chat has said, I have finished reading up on the Iranian protests. They were not really peaceful.
that strategically. What I mind is that is like this incessant focus on it. If you're going to like give a quick condemnation of the riots, whether strategically or because you really believe that the riots are bad, then you should do it quickly.
He says, but the Ayatollah emphasized martyrdom as a tenet of Islam.
Hey, if I may, you should be very particular, right? So, for example, if you're going on TV and you say,
so they weren't as violent as they could have been.
You are not aware that the media has portrayed the protests
and many were killed
categorically as riots.
But it wasn't peaceful, yeah.
Is being used to condemn the peaceful protests as well. You have to be very particular. You have to say, oh, I am unaware, for example, of people doing X, Y, and Z, throwing grenades into squads of cops or whatever. And I condemn that, of course. And most of us aren't doing that. That's one thing. And of course, like, there's nothing wrong with if being asked, like, are you in favor of your movement eating babies? Of saying, we don't do that, but of course I am, obviously. But when you're talking about, like, do you condemn the riots, quote unquote, and the movement as a whole is being characterized as riots, and adjacent movements are being looped in as riots, Of course, you would be foolish.
I also don't know what you mean by it being this like incessant attacks on riots and like nothing. I don't know exactly who's doing that. I mean, maybe I could even flip it the other way. It seems to be the case that when BLM was happening, the response on Twitter was like mostly people saying, "No, it's mostly peaceful. Fuck you." But yeah, there are some people in there. Yeah, rioting's based.
But Loaderbox, hang on, Loaderbox. We all agree that BLM is overall majority, like a peaceful quote unquote. We can talk about the ambiguities about that.
You just said like 10
but we
minutes
all
ago
agree.
that it was inherently violent.
Yes, because I don't treat violence and non-violence and peaceful as synonymous, just like you. I'm actually, the only reason why I'm allowing this is because I'm basing this off of what you said in your opening statement, Wick. We all agree that the vast majority of people in BLM protests are not, for example, breaking windows or throwing rocks at cops, etc., etc. And yet, nonetheless, when you look at the news coverage of these protests, what is overwhelmingly shown are burning cop cars and broken windows and dark, like cities at night with the glow of fire in the air. Like, they absolutely characterize these things as riots.
But the problem wasn't showcasing that. The problem was, and I think the reason to answer Sirius is
you don't think the problem was exaggerating that?
I like President Sunday's eyebrows went down and mine went up in response to Wick saying that. Sunday's like, you think did it? And I was like, shocked.
Out what I think the problem is in a moment here, if you let me, right? Is that as the reason why it sometimes seems as if we're constantly harping on it, because every time we said we want to try, hey, we condemn the riots, we condemn the violence, let's talk about the issues, someone out there raises their hand and says, actually, I think the riots are base and we should do more of them. And then we have to deal with that chucklefuck, right? And that's a problem.
Sure. You have to deal with them.
I will also say,
you don't have to acknowledge them.
Sorry.
You can just keep talking.
They exist. They will cause
Again, I think it's probably good that when you have the opportunity to stand against rioting within your movement or excessive force and all that, like, yeah, you probably should do it. I don't know what's wrong with that. And actually, one of the big reasons the protests were mostly peaceful was that they did that. When people tried to antagonize and tried to be more provocative and
exactly, Danny. It's also been rumored that the burning buildings part of BLM was often perpetrated by independent actors who were not part of the protest nor a central group. Yeah, there was video of like a guy who was clearly an undercover cop, like pouring gasoline around a building and stuff. Like, I can't remember exactly what he was doing, but it was something along those lines.
To smash it up. The protesters were they were so mean to them. They made sure that just what they didn't stand for that. And I think that's a good thing to do. Again, that's a specific thing. Do you disagree with that, Sirius?
No, I don't disagree with having discipline in a given protest action, but that's the problem I'm having is that we aren't violent protests when they happen don't tend to happen as the result of like this planned organized effort. They tend to be spontaneous. They tend to be unplanned. They tend to be organic. Like these kinds of things will happen. And so
the mystery
it's one thing to say when you are in a movement circle and you are planning to have a protest that you want to instill a certain kind of discipline into your protesters. That's one thing. It's another thing to like go out of your way to like respond to what right-wingers say about your protest movement when the more violent flanks do their thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think we disagree then, right? Not really? On that particular point, it doesn't seem to be.
I have a question, if I may. So, obviously, if we're talking about the optics and effectiveness of different types of protests, if you're in America, most of our protests are nonviolent, whereas if you're in, like, I don't know, Syria, the only way to protest getting a pothole in your street fixed is by forming a militia, firing rockets at buildings. There's contextual determinations. The question I have is, where's the line? Or to put it another way, if you saw a protest starting peaceful and then it started to tip into violence, how far gone would things have to be for you to look at that and go, okay? Because it's easy to do that in retrospect, right? I mean, there are lots of protests that we get to look back on for lessons to learn, but we don't learn the important lesson, which was what should we have thought at the time? In America, at the time of the civil rights protests, after all, the average person thought that the civil rights protests were a violent movement, that they were disruptive and disorderly. If we'd been listening to Optics Frogs back then, ones we would now disagree with in hindsight, we might have had a different answer. How do you judge? When is it okay to take a movement in that direction? Since we all agree there is a point, I just want to know where it is for you all.
So are you asking, for clarification, just so I know what you're asking, are you asking when we think it's morally justified that people get violent, or are you asking when we see something get violent, when should we rein it in?
Probably the former, I would say, because if you agree there's a point, and obviously it's a hypothetical, of course, it's not like a tomorrow thing, but I guess I'm wondering what qualifiers you're looking for.
If I may very quickly, there's a famous cartoon that you will often see on the internet. I can't remember the name of it, but it shows Martin Luther King in front of a journalist. What the fuck is his name? Montgomery? I can't remember. There's Montgomery the name somewhere. And it's a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. in front of a vast destruction, like a vast ruin of a city block. Okay. While he was active, Martin Luther King Jr.'s movement was not perceived by the general public as simply nonviolent. It wasn't even necessarily viewed as nonviolent by the vast majority.
Yeah, propaganda from the time.
So one of the problems you're up against here is that your empirical data,
Bosh.
despite the fact that yes, we all concede to the data that says, however problematized their identity of violent versus nonviolent is, and however however various it is depending on the paper you're citing, there does seem to be, in particular conditions, advantages to nonviolent protests, and none of us would disagree. Obviously, nonviolent protests have succeeded in some cases. There are cases where it works. Nonetheless, if you're going to say that categorically nonviolent protest has an advantage in terms of optics, if your empirical cases, especially the major ones, did not actually have that optic while they were operative, that's a bit of a problem for you. That kind of removes your empirical basis.
That cartoon you're referencing was a piece of right-wing propaganda that failed, though.
Yeah, it didn't work.
That optic did work. Like that's why the thing that went all around the country, even internationally, were those images of peaceful protesters getting beaten up by cops. That was the entire message. Was that these peaceful protesters who were all suited up and trying to absorb the blows are just taking it. The optics did work.
What is your basis for saying that, though? You say it doesn't work, but
well, say it doesn't work.
The civil rights movement was passed. Like the civil rights succeeded. That's
yeah, they got the legislation passed. This was like one of the most successful decades in like African American history.
I think that the appeals to international audiences is I think separate from how it was perceived in the United States itself, because what reaches overseas is not necessarily going to be like the propaganda that's influencing the average American person, because though amongst Americans, MLK was super unpopular.
His popularity got quite big towards 65, and then it dropped again after, because a lot of movements which were not MLK's did become violent. The Vietnam protests. But no, the impression generally was that although you're right, most of the Americans didn't support the demonstrators at the time, especially like freedom riders and all that, but they still grew in favor of civil rights legislation, and the people they were more appalled by was the cops and the segregationists, because they were literally fucking burning buildings down, and like they blew up a church, they got 4 black kids killed. Like that was what the people really condemned.
Yes, and let's not forget, right? Like there is
what you're pointing to.
I honestly feel like there's some historical revisionism going on here. Not sure if I'm sleepy or if this debate is making me sleepy. I mean, we are 40 minutes past the latest I usually go. I usually, on a stream, I stop before 9 p.m., but it's almost 10 o'clock, so... And this is also, like, I don't know... Like, we're 30 minutes behind, and the debate is still happening for another 30 minutes. Man, maybe we should wrap this up and, like, finish it some other time, because... Or like, maybe... I don't even know if we're gonna end up finishing it, because this has been... I was hoping for more dough, and dough just doesn't interrupt as much as I want it to. So I think that's part of the issue that I'm running into it right now, is like I mostly wanted to watch this to see dough being fucking based. Someone needs to clip it together later. Just clip together all the parts where dough said something, and then I'll watch that. Yeah, it's like almost 10 o'clock though, y'all. I've been waking up at like 5 or 7 a.m. sometimes lately, so it is getting to be late night, tired time. And maybe I'll go ahead and like hop off of here. It was fun to see Doe get a couple zingers out early on, but it doesn't seem like it's going to interject very often. Like, this is a conversation between Wick and President Sunday, ultimately. Like, literally the one person who I wanted to see talk a lot in here is the one person who is not talking very much. So... yeah, like, Doe just doesn't interject very often. Someday, I will get to join in for the fun debate panels. Like I said, I don't really like Malcolm anymore, but if Malcolm wants me to do a debate panel, I might still do it, just because I want, like... I kind of want to start getting more of that kind of... just stuff going on in my channel. I'll organize a debate panel on foods. Like, hot food takes. Jeez, yeah, I'm gonna close that. I'm done with it for now. So I did not end up talking about the thing that I meant to talk about today at all, which was the fact that the federal government is gonna do a bunch of, like, indirect bullshit because they know they won't be able to pass legislation to limit trans care. They're gonna try to, like, hold the defense budget hostage and shit like that. I need to organize some stream Mario Party. Ooh. Can you play if you don't have Mario Party? Because that could be fun. Get some friends with Switches and we all play Mario Party. I have a Switch. I just don't have Mario Party. So maybe I would have to, if it's for stream, I can write it off. If I don't ever play it off stream, I can write it off. Which I probably wouldn't ever play it off stream, so. Anyway, good look, God, that was, like, conversation was pretty frustrating. I don't feel like it went anywhere. Maybe I'll go back and review it later and be like, is there anything worth reviewing later on in this? The hearing itself is on Thursday morning, so maybe you can do a react. Yeah, maybe it's good that we're saving it till Thursday so that I can have a more comprehensive coverage anyway. Yeah, if anything that matters is said. I'm sure that we'll see some, you know, some very fucked up things happening. Thank you for posting the links to that stuff. So, yeah, so for tonight, I'm gonna go ahead and call it. It's almost 10 p.m. here. I need to go wash my face and start getting ready for bed. I ate a shit ton, a big dinner before our stream started, so thankfully, we did not deteriorate. Stream did not deteriorate right at the end into a food discussion, which happens sometimes when I get hungry at the end of stream. So, anyway, I appreciate y'all coming and hanging out. Much love. Parasocial hearts sending your way. Don't forget to follow me on other platforms. I'm posting on Blue Sky and Patreon a lot, including free posts on Patreon, so come check me out elsewhere, so that you don't... And join the Discord! Hey! Join the Discord. And we will see you all Thursday. Probably. Alright.